See What If Naruto Fused With Fem Orochimaru Got Fox and the Serpent. Support the author Fox and the Serpent by Zalenrak. Let's begin. The Forest of Death was unnaturally quiet in the moments after Orochimaru's arrival, the towering trees swallowing every sound except the ragged breathing of the three exhausted genin. Sakura lay slumped against a thick root, unconscious from chakra depletion. Sasuke was paralyzed on the ground, the fresh curse mark burning black across his neck, and Naruto bruised, bleeding, half his orange jacket torn away, still tried to stand between them and the pale woman who had taken the place of the Grasnine Proctor. Orochimaru watched him with narrow golden eyes, her long black hair swaying slightly in the humid air. She had come for Sasuke, for the perfect vessel, but this boy was something else entirely. He staggered forward again, fists clenched, even though his legs shook and his vision blurred. Ninetale's chakra flickered red around him in weak pulses, just enough to keep him upright. "Why do you keep getting up?" Orochimaru asked, her voice low and smooth, almost curious. She stepped closer, her tall form casting a shadow over him. "You're out of strength. Your teammates can't help you. You should stay down." Naruto spat blood to the side and glared up at her. "Because they're my friends. I'm not gonna let you hurt them." A faint smile curved her lips. Friends. Such a simple word from someone who, she suspected, had never truly had any. She extended her hand, fingers tipped with unnatural grace, and pressed 2 digits to his neck. Naruto tried to jerk away, but her grip was iron. A searing pain bloomed where she touched him, black markings spiraling outward across his collarbone and shoulder, the curse seal taking root. He gasped, knees buckling. But still he struggled, trying to push her arm away even as his body screamed in protest. Orochimaru tilted her head, genuinely surprised. The seal should have overwhelmed him instantly, yet here he was, squirming, fighting, refusing to go limp in her grasp. "Tell me, boy," she murmured, leaning down until their faces were inches apart. "You protect them so fiercely, but what happens when they learn what you carry inside you? The fox, the demon, the village's little secret." Naruto's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before he forced the glare back. "When they find out," she continued softly, "they'll fear you, hate you, turn their backs just like everyone else has. You've been alone your whole life, haven't you? No parents, no family, no one who wanted you." His face changed then. The defiant scowl faltered. Something raw and painful flickered across his features, memories of empty apartments, cold ramen cups, and villagers crossing the street to avoid him. His shoulders sagged, just slightly. Orochimaru saw it all. And in that moment, she understood exactly how useful he could be. A Jinchuriki with no real ties, burning with a need to be acknowledged, he could be molded, twisted, turned into a perfect tool for her ambitions. She tightened her grip for a second, watching him writhe uselessly against it. Then in an impulse she herself didn't fully understand, she leaned forward and pressed her cool lips to his forehead in a brief, almost gentle kiss. Naruto froze. "See you again, brat," she whispered against his skin. Then she released him and stepped back, her body dissolving into the form of a white snake that vanished into the undergrowth. Naruto dropped to his knees, clutching the burning curse mark. His forehead tingled where her lips had touched, and he lifted a trembling hand to it, utterly confused. What the heck was that? He muttered to himself, staring at the spot where she had disappeared. His headband, the one he'd fought so hard to earn, lay discarded in the dirt nearby, glinting dully in the filtered light. He didn't understand any of it. The pain, the seal, the question about the fox, or why the scariest person he'd ever met had kissed his forehead like some weird, twisted goodnight. But one thing he did know, he wasn't going to let her win. He pushed himself up again, wiped the blood from his mouth, and turned back to his teammates. "I'm not done yet," he said quietly to the silent forest. Not even close. The night after the preliminary matches was quiet in the hospital wing of the Chunin exam stadium. Most patients slept under the effects of painkillers or sheer exhaustion, but one bed remained stubbornly occupied by a wide-awake boy. Naruto sat propped against the headboard, staring out the large window at the moon. His left arm was in a sling, bruises darkened his face, and the fresh curse mark on his neck was hidden beneath thick bandages. He hadn't won his fight. Neji had crushed him, but he'd refused to stay down until the proctors forcibly stopped the match. He didn't hear the window open. A cool breeze brushed his skin, and then she was simply there, perched on the sill like a pale ghost. Orochimaru, still wearing the same disguised face she'd used during the exams. But the purple markings around her eyes and the cold golden stare gave her away instantly. Naruto jolted, reaching instinctively for a kunai that wasn't there. "Relax, brat," she murmured, sliding soundlessly into the room and letting the window close behind her. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be cooling." He glared anyway, heart hammering. "What do you want now? Come to gloat?" Orochimaru didn't answer right away. She studied him instead, head tilted, long black hair spilling over one shoulder. Moonlight painted sharp shadows across her face. She had come expecting to probe, to test, to see if the seed she'd planted in the forest had taken root. The boy had lost spectacularly today, brute force against refined technique, raw emotion against perfect control. By every metric she valued, he was a failure. No elegance, no strategy, no finesse. Just endless, stupid stubbornness. And yet here she was. "I watched your match," she said at last, stepping closer until she stood at the foot of his bed. "You were pathetic, clumsy, predictable. You never stood a chance." Naruto's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I know. You don't gotta rub it in. But you kept getting up," she continued softly. "Even after your chakra pathways were severed. Even when your legs wouldn't hold you. Even when everyone in the stands wrote you off." He looked away out the window again. "So what? That's just what I do." "Why?" The question hung in the air, simple and sharp. Naruto shrugged with his good shoulder. "Because giving up means they win. Neji, the old man. Everyone who says I'm nothing, I won't let him be right." Orochimaru's lips curved. Not quite a smile. "And when you become Hokage, when you stand at the top and prove them all wrong, what then?" He blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. "I dunno," he admitted quietly. "I guess I'll protect the village. Make sure no kid has to grow up like I did. Alone. Hated for something they didn't do." Something flickered in Orochimaru's golden eyes, recognition, perhaps, or something uncomfortably close to it. She moved without warning, sitting on the edge of his bed. Naruto tensed but didn't pull away. Up close, she smelled faintly of herbs and something metallic. "You really are a strange one," she said almost to herself. "No talent worth speaking of. No bloodline. No refinement. Just this relentless refusal to break." Naruto huffed. "Thanks, I guess." It wasn't a compliment, but her tone lacked its usual bite. Silence stretched between them. She reached out, slow enough that he could have stopped her, and brushed the edge of the bandage on his neck with cool fingertips. The curse mark throbbed faintly under her touch. "You fight for people who fear what's inside you," she murmured. "You chase a dream from a village that locked a monster in your belly and called it protection. Tell me, Naruto, doesn't it ever make you angry?" His breath hitched. For a moment the room felt too small. "Sometimes," he whispered, "but hating them won't change anything. I gotta be better than that." Orochimaru stared at him, truly stared, as if trying to dissect the thing that kept him moving when everything said he should have shattered long ago. She didn't understand it. She should have left, already taken what she needed from Sasuke and discarded this loud, orange-clad anomaly. Instead she found herself lingering, drawn to the raw, unpolished light in him that refused to dim. Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed another brief kiss to his forehead just above the bandage line, skin warm against her cool lips. Naruto went perfectly still, blue eyes wide. "Well, what was that for?" "A reminder," she said, standing smoothly, "that I'm still watching you, brat." She moved to the window, pausing on the sill. "You lost today," she added quietly, "but you didn't break. Remember that." Then she was gone, melting into the night like smoke. Naruto sat frozen for a long moment, hands slowly rising to touch the spot she'd kissed. His face burned. "Weird, creepy snake lady," he muttered, flopping back against the pillows. But he didn't wipe the spot away. And somewhere in the darkness outside, Orochimaru frowned at her own reflection in a puddle, unsettled by the faint, unfamiliar warmth lingering in her chest. This boy was going to be trouble. She almost looked forward to it. 000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000Before the sun even crested the walls of Konoha, every morning, before the sun even crested the walls of Konoha, Naruto was already out in the training grounds. Shadow clones popped into existence by the dozens, sometimes hundreds each one, throwing punches, practicing Rasengan, running laps, climbing trees with chakra control drills. He pushed until his lungs burned and his muscles screamed, until the curse mark on his neck throbbed like a second heartbeat, reminding him it was still there. Jiraiya dragged him across the country on training trips that were half research for the Toad Sage's stupid novels and half actual instruction. Water walking, summoning practice, he still hadn't managed more than tadpoles. Taijutsu forms that made his body ache in ways Kakashi's drills never had. And through it all, the news reached him like distant thunder. Orochimaru had attacked the village. Orochimaru had killed the third Hokage. Orochimaru had fought the entire ANBU, fought the barrier team, fought everyone, and then just walked away. Slipped through their fingers like smoke. Naruto heard it first in a small tavern on the road, from a traveling merchant who spoke in hushed, terrified tones. Jiraiya confirmed it later that night, face grim, sake cup untouched. The old man was gone. The professor, the one who'd always believed in him, even when no one else did. And she had done it. Naruto didn't sleep that night. He sat on the roof of the inn, staring at the stars, fists clenched so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. Why? He kept coming back to that single question, over and over, like a kunai lodged in his gut. Why would she do that? She was stronger than anyone he'd ever seen. She could have just left. She didn't need to come back and destroy everything. She didn't need to kill the old man. He remembered the forest of death. The way she'd looked at him, really looked at him, like she saw something worth noticing. The questions she'd asked about the village, about the fox, about being alone. The way her voice had softened, just a little. He remembered the hospital room, her sitting on his bed, calling him pathetic but staying anyway, asking why he didn't hate them, why he kept trying. And those kisses on his forehead twice now. Cool, brief, confusing. Like some twisted version of what a mother might do, if he'd ever had one. None of it made sense with this. Murderer. Traitor. Sannin gone rogue. He punched the roof tile so hard it cracked. Jiraiya found him there at dawn. Eyes red from lack of sleep, knuckles bleeding. You're angry, the Toad Sage said simply. Yeah, Naruto rasped. I want answers. Jiraiya sighed. You won't get them from her. Not honest ones. I don't care. I need to know why. The missions kept coming. D ranks at first, to ease him back into rhythm after the Chunin exams. Then C ranks. Escort duty, messenger runs, bandit clearing. He threw himself into them with a ferocity that made his teammates nervous. Sakura kept glancing at him like she expected him to snap. Sasuke, recovered now and colder than ever, just trained harder in response. Naruto didn't talk about it. Not to them. Not to Kakashi. Not even to Jiraiya after that first night. But every time he formed a Rasengan, he imagined driving it through her chest. Every time the curse mark flared during training, he welcomed the pain because it was hers. A tether. A reminder. He wanted to hate her completely. It would have been easier. But he couldn't shake the memory of her voice in the moonlight. You've been alone your whole life, haven't you? And the worst part, the part that made him angriest at himself, was that some small, traitorous piece of him wondered if she'd understood that better than anyone else ever had. Then came the summons. Jiraiya found him after a particularly brutal training session, covered in mud and scrapes, trying to force a bigger Rasengan than his body could handle yet. Pack your things, brat, the sage said, tossing him a scroll with the Hokage's seal. We're leaving tomorrow. Naruto caught it, frowning. Another training trip? Something like that. The councils finally admitted they're in over their heads. Konoha needs a new Hokage, and there's only one person left who's qualified. Naruto's eyes widened. You mean? Tsunade, Jiraiya confirmed. My old teammate, the greatest medical nin in the world, and one of the legendary Sannin. Naruto stared at the scroll, mind racing. Orochimaru's teammate, someone who knew her, really knew her, before everything went wrong, someone who might have answers. He looked up at Jiraiya, determination burning through the exhaustion. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go find her. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at the sudden intensity. You seem awfully eager. Naruto clenched his fist around the scroll. I got questions, he said quietly, and this time I'm getting answers. One way or another. As they left Konoha the next morning, Naruto glanced back, only one seat, the Hokage faces carved into the mountain. The third's was still there, but soon it would be joined by someone new. And somewhere out there, Orochimaru was still moving, planning, waiting. He touched the hidden curse mark under his jacket. I'll find you again, he thought. And when I do, you're gonna tell me why. The search for Tsunade took weeks that stretched into a month. Then 2. Naruto and Jiraiya crisscrossed the land of fire like wandering ronin, chasing rumors the way dogs chase scents. Small farming villages where old women claimed a big-breasted medic had healed a child's broken leg for free. Port towns where gamblers whispered about a woman who could win or lose a fortune in a single night and walk away laughing. Mountain hot springs where innkeepers swore a legendary kunoichi had soaked for days, drinking sake by the barrel. Every lead ended the same way. They arrived too late. Tsunade had been there always, days, sometimes only hours earlier, and vanished again. Naruto's frustration grew with every empty trail. He trained harder than ever to burn it off. While Jiraiya snooped in bars and bathhouses for information, Naruto stayed outside town limits, surrounded by hundreds of shadow clones, all spinning chakra in their palms. The forest echoed with constant pops of failed Rasengan's blue spheres fizzling out, exploding prematurely, or simply refusing to hold shape. Step 1, rotation. Step 2, power. Step 3, containment. He repeated Jiraiya's instructions like a mantra, sweat soaking his jacket, palms raw and blistered. The curse mark ached whenever his chakra surged too wildly, black flames licking up his shoulder as a warning. He welcomed the sting, kept him sharp, kept her in his mind. Why did you kill him? Why come back at all? What did you want so badly that the old man's life wasn't worth leaving alone? At night, around campfires, Jiraiya tried to distract him with stories of the Sannin's younger days, how Tsunade could punch craters into the earth, how Orochimaru had once spent 3 days straight in the library researching forbidden seals, how the three of them had been unstoppable together. Naruto listened with half an ear, nodding at the right moments, but his thoughts always circled back to golden eyes and pale skin and that cool, confusing press of lips against his forehead. Finally, in a bustling trade city called Tanzaka Town, the trail went hot. Jiraiya came back to there in room one afternoon, face tight. Found her. She's in the biggest casino in town. Losing spectacularly, from what I hear. Naruto was already pulling on his sandals. Let's go. Not yet. Jiraiya held up a hand. There's something else. Word is she's been seen with Orochimaru. Multiple times. Meetings in private rooms. No fighting. Just talking. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Naruto froze. What? Jiraiya's expression was grim. I don't know what it means yet. Could be a deal. Could be something worse. But we need to approach this carefully. Carefully lasted exactly until Naruto caught sight of her. They found Tsunade that evening in a dimly lit gambling hall thick with smoke and desperation. She sat at a high-stakes dicing table, blonde pigtails swaying as she laughed loudly, slamming down another losing bet. Beside her, acting as both bodyguard and assistant, was a quiet silver-haired woman, Shizune, looking exhausted. Jiraiya moved to intercept, but Naruto's eyes weren't on Tsunade. They were on the figure leaning against a far wall, half hidden in shadow. Tall, pale, long black hair, purple eye markings visible even in the low light. Orochimaru. She wore a simple traveler's cloak, no headband, no obvious weapons, but Naruto would have recognized her anywhere. She was watching Tsunade with that same faintly amused expression she'd worn in the hospital, like the entire world was a mildly interesting experiment. Something inside Naruto snapped. He didn't think. He just moved. Oi! His shout cut through the noise of the casino like a kunai. Gamblers turned. Dice clattered to a stop. Orochimaru's golden eyes shifted to him, one brow arching slightly in recognition. Naruto stormed across the floor, ignoring Jiraiya's sharp brat. Wait, and Tsunade's startled, who the hell? He stopped a few feet from Orochimaru. Fists clenched so hard his knuckles went white. You, he growled. Orochimaru's lips curved. Hello again, Naruto. You've grown. Don't hello me. His voice cracked with fury. You killed the old man. You attacked the village. Why? What did he ever do to you? What did any of us do? The room had gone deathly quiet. Even the croupiers froze. Orochimaru regarded him calmly, as if he were a mildly interesting specimen. So many questions. And all at once, Naruto stepped closer, chest heaving. Answer me. You had everything, strength, knowledge, whatever you wanted. Why come back and destroy it all? Why kill him? For a long moment, Orochimaru said nothing. Then she tilted her head, studying him the way she had in the forest and the hospital. Because he stood in my way, she said softly. Because the village stood in my way. Because I want something greater than what they were willing to give. That's it? Naruto's voice shook. That's your reason? Some selfish, careful, Orochimaru murmured. Anger makes you loud, not right. He wanted to hit her, wanted to form a Rasengan right there and drive it through her chest. His chakra surged in response to the thought, the curse mark flaring hot under his collar. Black patterns crawled up his neck before he forced them back down. Tsunade stood now, eyes narrowed between them. You know this kid, Orochimaru? Oh yes, Orochimaru replied, not looking away from Naruto. We've met. He's quite persistent. Naruto ignored her. You said you were watching me. You put this thing on me. He yanked his collar aside, revealing the black seal. You asked why I didn't hate the village. Why I kept fighting. Was it all just a game to you? Orochimaru's gaze flicked to the mark, something unreadable passing through her eyes. No, she said at last. Not a game. An investment. Investment in what? Destroying everything? In potential. She stepped forward, closing the distance until only a foot separated them. Up close, Naruto could see the faint curiosity in her expression. The same odd intensity she'd shown in the hospital. Yours specifically. Naruto flinched. What? You still don't understand, do you? Her voice was almost gentle. You carry a power most would kill for. You endure what would break others. And yet you waste it on a village that fears you. On dreams they'll never let you achieve. Shut up, he snapped, but his voice wavered. Orochimaru reached out slowly, deliberately, and brushed a fingertip against the curse mark. Naruto tensed but didn't pull away. The touch sent a jolt through the seal, warm and painful at once. I gave you a gift, she whispered. One day you'll thank me for it. I'll never thank you for anything. His eyes burned. Not for this. Not for the old man. Not for any of it. She studied his face for a long moment, something almost like disappointment flickering there. Such a stubborn brat, she murmured. Then, without warning, she leaned down and pressed her lips to his forehead again, cool, brief, deliberate. Naruto froze, heat rushing to his face even through the fury. Orochimaru pulled back, a faint smirk playing at her mouth. Until next time. She turned and walked away, melting into the crowd as if she'd never been there. No one tried to stop her. No one dared. Naruto stood rooted to the spot, hand slowly rising to his forehead, touching the lingering chill. Jiraiya's heavy hand landed on his shoulder. Come on, brat. We've got a future Hokage to convince. But as they turned toward Tsunadeho was now staring at Naruto with new interest. Naruto's mind was elsewhere. 3 times now. 3 times she'd kissed his forehead like some bizarre promise. And every time it left him more confused, more angry, more determined to understand her. He clenched his fist, chakra spinning wildly in his palm, a perfect, buzzing Rasengan forming for the first time without a clone's help. Next time, he thought fiercely, I'll be strong enough to make you answer properly. Next time, I'll stop you. 00000000000. The village had never been kind to Naruto, but it had at least pretended. After the invasion, with the third dead and the barriers shattered, that pretense crumbled like the walls Orochimaru's summons had torn down. Grief hung over Konoha like funeral incense, thick, choking, impossible to ignore. And in that grief, someone found fertile ground to plant poison. It started with whispers. A chunin in the mission office muttering that the demon brat had been seen talking to the snake trader in Tenzaka town. A jonin instructor warning his students to keep their distance from Uzumaki because you never know what deals he's made. A shopkeeper refusing to sell Naruto tomatoes, claiming the boy's money was tainted by treason. Danzo Shimura never appeared in person, of course. He didn't need to. Root operatives were masters of quiet knives and quieter words. They fed the rumors carefully. Orochimaru had marked the Jinchuriki. Orochimaru had visited him in the hospital. Orochimaru had met him again during the search for Tsunade. Each story was just true enough to sting, just vague enough to avoid direct refutation. Then, one rainy afternoon, the final secret broke loose. Someone Root almost certainly leaked the truth about the Nine Tails. Not in an official announcement, but in graffiti on the academy walls, in anonymous letters slipped under doors, in drunken confessions at bars that somehow everyone heard about by morning. The demon fox is sealed inside Uzumaki Naruto. He's been lying to you all along. How many died because of him during the invasion? After that, the pretense was gone entirely. Naruto felt it the moment he stepped into the village proper after returning with Tsunade. Ichiraku's curtain stayed drawn when he approached. Old man Tuchi's apologetic face appeared just long enough to mouth "I'm sorry" before closing the shutter. Children who once begged him for pranks now ran when they saw his orange jacket. Mothers pulled their kids close and crossed the street. The Konoha 11, his generation, the ones who were supposed to understand him, best reacted in pieces, each fracture cutting deeper than the last. Shikamaru was the first he ran into. The Nara leaned against a fence, staring at the clouds like always, but his eyes flicked down when Naruto approached. "Hey, Shikamaru, wanna play shogi or..." "It's true, isn't it?" Shikamaru interrupted, voice flat. "About the fox." Naruto's grin faltered. "Yeah, but it's not like... I figured something was up." Shikamaru sighed. "Too many weird coincidences. Just give me some time. Okay? This is a lot." He walked away without another word. Not hostile, just distant. And somehow that hurt worse. Choji hesitated longer. The Akimichi found him at the barbecue place. Plate piled high as usual, but he didn't wave Naruto over like he normally would. "I don't think you're a bad guy," Choji said quietly when Naruto asked. "But my dad says the Nine Tails killed a lot of people, including clan members. I don't know what to think yet." He left half his food uneaten, something Naruto had never seen before. Ino was sharper. She spotted him near the flower shop and marched straight up, eyes blazing. "How could you not tell us?" she demanded. "All those years acting like some loud idiot, and you were carrying that thing? People died because of you." I didn't save it." She turned on her heel, blonde ponytail whipping like a slap. Sakura tried. She really did. The first few times Naruto passed her on the street, she forced a smile and asked how training was going. But he saw the strain in it, the way her eyes darted to the whispers around them. After a week, she started finding excuses to be elsewhere when he approached. Kiba was loud about it. "I knew you smelled weird," he shouted across the training field one day, Akamaru growling low beside him. "Demons stink all over you." Hinata never said anything cruel. She just stopped meeting his eyes. When they passed in the market, her face flushed red and she bowed quickly, hurrying away with her head down. The absence of her quiet Naruto-kun felt like losing something precious. Shino was silent, as always, but his bugs buzzed louder around Naruto, now agitated. Wary. Tenten avoided him entirely. Lee, surprisingly, was one of the few who didn't change at first, still shouting about youth and challenging him to runs. But even Lee's enthusiasm dimmed after his sensei pulled him aside for a long talk. Sasuke was complicated. The Uchiha had his own curse mark, his own history with Orochimaru. When Naruto cornered him on the pier one evening, Sasuke just stared out at the water. You think I wanted this? Naruto asked, voice raw. You think I asked for any of it? Sasuke's reply was quiet. No, but you got power from it anyway, just like I did. He didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. The parallel hung between them like a blade. The stones started a few days later. At first it was just Oni-child throwing a pebble and running. Then older kids. Then drunk Chunin after missions. Naruto learned to keep his head down when walking through crowds, but the impacts still found him. A rock to the shoulder. A sharp stone clipping his temple and drawing blood. He never fought back. Not once. Because if he lost control even for a second, they'd have proof he was the monster they already believed in. His state of mind unraveled in quiet moments. Late at night on rooftops, staring at the Hokage monument where the third's face now joined the others. Wondering if the old man had known this would happen eventually. Wondering if Orochimaru had planned it. Had she told someone about their meetings? Had she leaked the secret herself, just to watch him break? Was this her way of proving the village didn't deserve him? Or was it Danzo, pulling strings to isolate him, make him desperate enough to become the weapon Root wanted? He didn't know anymore. The questions circled like vultures. Tsunade tried. The new Godame summoned him to the office regularly, gave him missions outside the village to keep him sharp, assigned him extra medical checkups. She drank less when he was around, poured him tea instead of sake, and told him bluntly that the village was full of idiots but they'd come around eventually. Jiraiya stayed longer than planned, canceling research trips to spar with him, teach him new jutsu, drag him to hot springs for morale. The Toad Sage's jokes felt forced now, his watchful eyes too knowing. But nothing stopped the spiral. Then, one night when the abuse had reached a new low, Naruto coming home to find Demon painted across his apartment door in red. The sound for arrived. They didn't come loudly. No explosions, no demands. Just 4 figures appearing on the rooftops around his building as he sat on the balcony, bandaging a split lip from that day's training accident. Sakan tilted his head, smirking. Orochimaru-sama sends a message. Kadamaru's 6 arms flexed. She's heard about your troubles. Jirobo chuckled darkly. Pathetic, really. Letting insects throw stones at a Jinchuriki. Tayuya spat to the side. She says if the village doesn't want you, there's always a place with us. They tossed a scroll at his feet sealed with Orochimaru's personal mark. Inside was a single sheet of paper, elegant handwriting Naruto recognized immediately. Brat asterisk. The village shows its true face at last. How does it feel to be seen for what you are? Asterisk. Come to me when you're ready to stop pretending they'll ever love you. Asterisk. I'll be waiting. Asterisk. Oh, asterisk. Naruto stared at the note for a long time, fingers trembling. The sound for watched him, expectant. He looked up at them, eyes hard. Tell her, he said quietly, that I'm not running away. And I'm not joining her either. Tayuya snorted. You'll change your mind when they come with torches. Maybe, Naruto replied. But not tonight. The 4 ninjas exchanged glances, then vanished into the darkness as silently as they'd come. Naruto stayed on the balcony until dawn, note clenched in his fist. He didn't burn it. He didn't throw it away. He folded it carefully and tucked it into his pocket right over the place where the curse mark burned beneath his skin. The village had turned on him. Orochimaru was offering a hand. And Naruto, for the first time in his life, wasn't sure which hurt worse. The days bled into weeks, and the weeks began to feel like years. Naruto stopped going home. His apartment had become a target, windows shattered, walls defaced. The door kicked in so many times he no longer bothered locking it. Instead he slept wherever exhaustion took him. On training grounds, under bridges, on the tiled roofs of abandoned buildings. Anywhere the stones couldn't reach as easily. He trained until his body gave out, then pushed further. Shadow clones by the hundreds filled the secluded clearings outside the village. Rasengan after Rasengan spun in callous palms, larger, denser, more controlled each time. He practiced wind nature manipulation until the leaves around him shredded themselves mid-air. He ran laps around Konoha's outer walls until his legs buckled, then crawled until he could stand again. The curse mark flared more often now, black patterns crawling up his neck and arms whenever his emotions spiked. He didn't suppress it anymore. He studied it, let the power flood his system, memorizing how it sharpened his senses, how it dulled pain, how it whispered promises of strength in a voice that sounded disturbingly like hers. At night, when the clones dispersed and the memories flooded back, every failure, every bruise, every exhausted collapse sat alone and thought about her. Orochimaru. He hated her. Truly, deeply hated her for what she'd done to the third, to the village, to Sasuke, to him. But the hatred was tangled with something else now, grudging recognition. She had seen him when no one else did. She had asked questions no one else dared to ask. She had offered power when the village offered only fear. And right now, power was the only thing that mattered. Because the dream, the big, stupid, impossible dream of becoming Hokage was slipping through his fingers like sand. How could he protect a village that threw stones at him? How could he lead people who crossed the street to avoid him? How could he stand on that monument when half the village believed he was the reason the third's face had to be carved there in the first place? Tsunade still called him into the office, still gave him missions, still told him the village would come around. Jiraiya still showed up with new scrolls and bad jokes and quiet, worried eyes. Iruka still left bowls of ramen on the academy steps when he thought Naruto wasn't looking. But it wasn't enough anymore. He was 15, broke, homeless in his own village, and the most powerful thing inside him was a mark left by its greatest traitor. One night, after a particularly brutal day, Chunin, he'd once respected, had accidentally driven him into a wall during a spar. Laughing as he hit the ground, sat on the head of the fourth Hokage's stone face and stared out over Konoha. The village lights twinkled below like 1,000 indifferent eyes. "I won't break," he whispered to the wind. "Not now. Not ever." But staying wasn't strength anymore. Staying was just bleeding slower. He thought about Orochimaru's note, still folded in his inner pocket, edges worn soft from how often he'd reread it. "Come to me when you're ready to stop pretending they'll ever love you." He hated that she was right. He hated that the idea of leaving didn't feel like betrayal anymore. Felt like survival. 3 nights later, under a new moon that left the forest in perfect darkness, Naruto made his choice. He left a single note on Tsunade's desk, slipped past the ANBU guards with a shadow clone feint he'd practiced for weeks. "I'm not running away. I'm gonna get strong enough to come back on my own terms. Don't look for me." Then he walked out the north gate without looking back. The Sound Four were waiting exactly where they'd said they would, Betwo miles into the forest, lounging against trees like they owned the night. Tayuya noticed him first, red eyes narrowing. "Changed your mind, demon brat?" Naruto stopped a few paces away, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. "I'm not joining Orochimaru," he said flatly. "Not yet, but I need to get stronger, fast. And you lot work for someone who knows how." Sakan grinned, twin heads tilting in unison. "So you want training?" "I want power," Naruto corrected. "Enough that no one can ever throw stones at me again. Enough that I can choose my own path." Kadamaru laughed, 6 arms flexing. "And if Orochimaru-sama wants more than training in return?" Naruto met his gaze steadily. "Then we'll talk. But I'm not anyone's weapon. Not the village's. Not hers." Jirobo pushed off his tree, towering over him. Bold words for a kid who couldn't even beat Neji. Naruto's eyes flashed red for a fraction of a second, Ninetale's chakra flickering. "Try me now." The air tensed. Tayuya's fingers twitched toward her flute. Then Sakan waved a lazy hand. "Enough." Orochimaru-sama said to bring him if he came willingly. "He's willing." They formed up around him, loose, but deliberate. An escort, not a capture. As they moved deeper into the forest, Naruto felt the weight of Konoha falling away behind him like an old skin. He didn't know if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. He only knew he couldn't stay and keep breaking. Back in the village, the realization came slowly. First, the ANBU reported he hadn't returned from a solo training session. Then Tsunade found the note. Then the gate logs confirmed he'd left alone. No signs of struggle. A retrieval mission was assembled within hours. Kakashi took point, flanked by guys Team Lee, Neji, Tenten. Sakura insisted on coming, face pale but determined. Shikamaru was dragged in for strategy, grumbling but compliant. Even Sasuke joined without being asked, Sharingan already spinning. They searched for weeks. Every hidden base Orochimaru had ever used. Every rumor of sound movement. Every trail Naruto might have left. Nothing. He had vanished as completely as if the forest had swallowed him whole. In the Hokage's office, Danzo Shimura stood before Tsunade's desk, cane tapping softly against the floor. I warned the council, he said, voice low and satisfied despite the words. The boy was unstable. Associations with the traitor. The Jinchuriki's loyalty was always in question. Tsunade's fist left a hairline crack in the wood. You spread those rumors. You pushed him out. Danzo didn't deny it. I tested him. He failed. The weapon chose the enemy. He's a child, Tsunade snarled. He is Konoha's greatest asset, Danzo corrected. And now he is lost. But not irretrievable. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. The council has authorized Root to handle recovery. Next time we will not rely on sentiment. The old method seals, conditioning, absolute control will ensure obedience. Tsunade's sake cup shattered in her grip. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered over the village, dark and heavy with rain that refused to fall. Somewhere far away, in a hidden underground lair lit by torchlight, Naruto stood shirtless in a training chamber while Orochimaru circled him slowly, golden eyes tracing the curse mark that now pulsed steadily with his heartbeat. Welcome, brat, she murmured, voice laced with satisfaction. I knew you'd come. Naruto met her gaze, blue eyes hard with resolve. I'm not here for you, he said. I'm here for me. Orochimaru smiled, sharp and genuine. That, she replied, is exactly why you'll surpass them all. The sound of stone grinding against stone echoed as the chamber doors sealed behind him. Konoha searched, Danzo schemed, and Naruto Uzumaki began to change in ways the village would never forgive and never forget. 00000000000. The journey through the underground tunnels felt endless. The sound led him deeper than he thought possible, down stone corridors lit by flickering torches, past sealed doors that hummed with chakra seals, through chambers where the air grew thick and metallic. Naruto's footsteps echoed too loudly in his own ears. He kept his hands in his pockets, chin high, refusing to show how the oppressive darkness pressed against him. Finally, they stopped before a heavy iron door. Tayuya knocked once, and it swung open on silent hinges. The room beyond was vast and dim, more cavern than chamber. Shelves of scrolls and glass vials lined the walls, reflecting the weak green light from bioluminescent fungi growing in cracks. In the center, on a simple high-backed chair that looked almost like a throne, sat Orochimaru. She was alone. Her long black hair spilled over the back of the chair like ink. Her posture was relaxed, one leg crossed over the other, but something was wrong. Both arms were wrapped in thick white bandages from fingertip to shoulder, stained faintly yellow in places where old blood had seeped through. She held a small scroll in her lap with awkward, stiff fingers. The sound forebowed and retreated, the door grinding shut behind them. Silence fell, broken only by the distant drip of water somewhere deeper in the lair. Naruto approached slowly, stopping a few paces away. Up close, he could see the faint sheen of sweat on her pale forehead, the tightness around her golden eyes. She was in pain. Real pain. What happened to your arms? He asked before he could stop himself. The question came out rougher than he intended. Orochimaru's gaze lifted to him, slow and measuring. A thin smile curved her lips. The old geezer took them, she said simply, voice softer than usual, laced with a rasp. Sarutobi Hiruzen. In our final exchange, he used the Death Reaper seal. My arms were the price. She flexed her bandaged fingers experimentally and winced. Quite permanent, I'm afraid. For now. Naruto's stomach twisted. He remembered the invasion, the giant Shinigami looming over the rooftop battlefield. The Third's desperate last stand. He had never known the full cost. You lost your arms because of him? Among other things. Her smile widened slightly, but it didn't reach her eyes. And yet here you are, brat. In my home. After everything. Naruto shifted his weight, jaw tight. I didn't come here for you. No, she murmured. You came here despite me. That's almost more interesting. She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to read something written beneath his skin. Why now? She asked. The village finally showed its fangs. Did it? Stones? Whispers? Doors slammed in your face? Naruto's fists clenched. You don't get to act like you understand. But I do. Her voice was quiet, almost kind. Better than anyone. I was once their golden child too, you know. One of the legendary Sannin. Beloved. Feared. Respected. And then I reached for something they didn't approve of, and suddenly I was the monster. That's not the same, he snapped. You killed people. Experimented on them. You attacked the village. You killed the old man. Yes, she admitted without hesitation. I did, and I would do it again. Because the world doesn't change if you beg it nicely. It changes when someone is willing to become the villain. Naruto glared at her, chest heaving. I hate you, he said, the words raw. I hate everything you've done. To the third. To Sasuke. To me. I hate that you put this thing on me. He yanked his collar aside, revealing the curse mark, black and dormant but always there. I hate that part of me thinks you might be the only one who can make me strong enough to matter. Orochimaru's smile softened, something almost fond flickering across her face. And yet, she said, you walk through my door anyway. Welcome to Otogekure, Naruto. She rose slowly, movements careful, as if every motion cost her. A faint grunt escaped as she straightened. She gestured with a bandaged arm toward a side passage. Come, let me show you what you've joined. He followed because he had come this far. The laboratories were worse than he imagined. Row upon row of sealed tanks lined the wall, some empty, some filled with pale, preservative fluid and things that had once been human. Limbs suspended in jars, eyes floating in solution, bodies twisted by failed experiments, faces frozen in silent screams. The air smelled of formaldehyde and old blood. Naruto stopped in the doorway, bile rising in his throat. What is this? His voice cracked. Progress. Orochimaru replied calmly, standing beside him. The cost of knowledge. Every great discovery demands sacrifice. These were people, he whispered, horrified. You did this to them? Some volunteered, she said. Most were prisoners. Enemies of the village that cast them out, or of other villages that would have executed them anyway. I gave their deaths meaning. Naruto turned to her, eyes wide with disgust. Do you really have no conscience? How can you look at this and not feel anything? Orochimaru regarded the tanks with clinical detachment. Conscience is a luxury for those with time, she said. I do not have that luxury. I want to understand everything, every jutsu, every bloodline, every secret the world hides. To do that, I must live long enough to learn it all. Immortality is not a whim, Naruto. It is necessity. She turned to him, golden eyes intense. One day I will build a village of my own. Not bound by the old councils, the old fears, the old lies. A place where science and power are not shackled by morality. Where strength is cultivated, not feared. Naruto shook his head slowly. You think that makes it okay? Cutting people apart? Turning them into this? She was quiet for a moment. You are still a child, she said softly. You see cruelty. I see evolution. The shinobi world is built on corpses. Every great technique was born from someone's pain. The second Hokage invented the Edo Tensei by studying forbidden corpses. The Sharingan awakens through loss and trauma. Even your precious Rasengan required years of failure and sacrifice to perfect. She stepped closer, voice dropping. You will not understand yet. The sacrifices required for true prosperity. The biological truths. That strength demands refinement. That perfection demands pruning the weak branches. One day, perhaps, you will. Naruto looked away, unable to meet her gaze. The tanks seemed to watch him. I'm not like you, he muttered. I'll never be okay with this. No, she agreed. Not yet. She turned and led him further down the corridor, footsteps echoing. Halfway through, a coughing fit seized her, deep, wet, painful. She braced a bandaged arm against the wall, body shaking as she tried to suppress it. A faint grunt of agony escaped between coughs. Naruto stopped, instinctively reaching out then pulling his hand back. You're really hurt bad. Huh? He said quietly. The seal took more than arms. She rasped, straightening with effort. But pain is temporary. Knowledge is eternal. She continued walking, slower now. Eventually, they reached a small Spartan room carved into the stone bed, desk, lantern. A single window slit high in the wall showing only rock. Your quarters, she said. For as long as you choose to stay. Naruto looked around. It was cold, impersonal. Nothing like the chaotic warmth of his old apartment. I'm not your student, he said again. And I'm not forgiving you. Orochimaru leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion evident in the slump of her shoulders. I don't need forgiveness, she replied. I need potential realized. And you, Naruto, you are overflowing with it. She pushed off the frame, turning to leave. Rest. Training begins tomorrow. And brat. She paused in the doorway, glancing back. Thank you for coming. I was beginning to think you never would. Then she was gone. Footsteps fading down the corridor. Another suppressed cough echoing faintly in the distance. Naruto stood alone in the dim room, staring at the closed door. He sat heavily on the bed, head in his hands. He had crossed a line there was no uncrossing. He was in the snake's lair now. And part of him, the part that terrified him most, wasn't entirely sure he wanted to leave. The first training session began at dawn, or what passed for dawn, in the depths of the hidden lair. A low, cavernous hall had been cleared for the purpose. Smooth stone floor, high ceiling supported by natural pillars, walls etched with ceiling formulas that glowed faintly blue. Torches burned with steady green flames, casting long shadows. The air was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of minerals and something sharper, antiseptic, maybe, or old blood. Naruto arrived early, already dressed in a simple black training gi that one of the sound nin had left folded outside his door. No orange, no headband, just fabric that didn't whisper demon brat to anyone who saw it. He stood in the center of the room, rolling his shoulders, trying to ignore how the curse mark tingled in anticipation. Orochimaru entered 10 minutes later, moving with deliberate slowness. She wore a loose, dark yukata that hid the full extent of her bandaged arms, but the stiffness in her posture was unmistakable. Her long hair was tied back in a low tail, a few strands escaping to frame her pale face. Kabuto followed 2 steps behind, silver hair catching the torchlight, carrying a small lacquered tray with vials and syringes. She did not greet him. She simply walked to the edge of the training area and settled onto a stone bench carved into the wall. One bandaged hand rested on her knee. The other lay limp in her lap. Kabuto placed the tray on a low table beside her and remained standing, silent and watchful. Naruto met her eyes. So what now? You gonna teach me some forbidden jutsu or just watch me run laps? Orochimaru's lips curved faintly. Today we observe limits. Yours. And mine. She nodded once to Kabuto. He stepped forward and placed a single kunai on the floor between them. 500 shadow clones, Orochimaru said, voice calm but carrying easily in the cavern. Each one will perform the Rasengan from start to finish. No breaks, no shortcuts. When the last clone dispels, you will do it again. And again. Until I tell you to stop. Naruto stared at her. That's it? That, she replied, is only the beginning. He didn't argue. He bit his thumb, slammed his palm to the ground, and the room exploded with orange. Hundreds of Narutos filled the space, spinning, shouting, chakra flaring blue in their palms. The sound was deafening. The whir of rotation, the pop of failed attempts, the grunt of effort as clones pushed past exhaustion and kept going. The real Naruto stood in the center, directing them like a conductor, sweat already beading on his forehead. He felt the drain immediately, maintaining that many clones while forcing each one to perform a high-level technique was like trying to juggle burning coals with his chakra pathways. Orochimaru watched without expression. Minutes stretched into an hour. Clones began to dispel in waves as their chakra ran dry, memories flooding back to Naruto in a torrent of fatigue and muscle strain. He staggered but caught himself, jaw clenched, and summoned the next wave. Kabuto moved quietly to Orochimaru's side. He uncorked a vial of dark green liquid and held it to her lips. She drank without looking away from Naruto, throat working slowly. When the vial was empty, Kabuto set it aside and prepared a syringe-clear fluid that he injected carefully into the crook of her elbow through a gap in the bandages. She didn't flinch, but her breath hitched slightly. A faint tremor ran through her shoulders. Naruto noticed. Of course he noticed. Even buried under the strain of the exercise, he saw the way her face tightened, the way her bandaged fingers curled involuntarily. He kept going. Second hour. The Raisingans were getting larger now, more stable. Some clones managed to hold perfect spheres for 30 seconds before smashing them into the reinforced training dummies along the wall. Stone cracked. Dust fell from the ceiling. Naruto's real body was soaked in sweat, GI clinging to his skin. His breathing came in harsh gasps. The curse mark began to spread, black flames licking up his neck, across his cheek. Power surged with it, dulling the exhaustion, sharpening his focus. Orochimaru's eyes narrowed slightly, the only sign of approval she gave. Kabuto changed her bandages midway through the second hour. He worked with practiced efficiency, peeling away layers stained with old blood and seepage, cleaning the stumps beneath with antiseptic that made even Naruto's nose burn from across the room. The skin beneath was raw, angry red, ending in cauterized seals where the Death Reaper had taken its toll. Orochimaru endured it in complete silence, gaze never leaving Naruto. When Kabuto applied fresh wrappings, she leaned her head back against the wall for a moment, eyes half-lidded, a faint sheen of sweat on her upper lip. Pain, real and deep, etched lines around her mouth that Naruto had never seen before. He faltered for the first time. A dozen clones popped out of existence as his concentration slipped. Eyes forward, Orochimaru said quietly. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, pain or warning, he couldn't tell. He gritted his teeth and summoned again. Third hour. Naruto's legs shook. His vision blurred at the edges. The memories crashing back from dispelled clones carried not just fatigue but phantom pain-burned palms, torn muscles, chakra exhaustion so complete it felt like drowning. The curse mark was fully active now, black patterns covering half his face, one eye flickering red. Ninetale's chakra seeped through the cracks, raw and angry, knitting his body back together just enough to keep standing. Orochimaru coughed once sharp, wet, quickly suppressed. Kabuto was at her side instantly, pressing a cloth to her mouth. When he pulled it away, faint red speckled the white fabric. She waved him off with a small motion of her bandaged hand. Naruto saw it. His chest tightened. Why are you even here? He rasped during a brief lull between waves of clones. You can barely move. Just let Kabuto handle the watching. Orochimaru's golden eyes met his, sharp despite the pain. Because, she said softly, I need to see what you become when no one is kind to you. When the only thing pushing you forward is your own refusal to break. She shifted slightly on the bench and couldn't quite hide the grunt of pain that escaped. Naruto looked away, jaw tight. He summoned the next wave. Fourth hour. The room was a haze of dust and chakra residue. Training dummies lay in pieces. The floor was scarred with impact craters. Naruto was on his knees now, palms bleeding from failed rotations, but the Rasengan in his real hand was larger than ever, dense, perfectly stable, humming with wind chakra that shredded the air around it. Orochimaru watched him, silent, suffering in equal measure. Kabuto stood ready with more medicine, but she raised one bandaged hand to stop him. Not yet. Naruto looked up at her through sweat-soaked bangs, chest heaving, curse mark pulsing like a second heart. Is this enough? He demanded, voice raw. Or do you want me to keep going until I drop? Orochimaru studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she inclined her head. Enough, she said. For today. Naruto let the Rasengan dissipate. The remaining clones vanished in a chorus of pops. He collapsed forward, catching himself on trembling arms, head bowed as he fought for breath. Orochimaru rose from the bench with visible effort, Kabuto steadying her elbow. She walked the few steps to stand over him, yukata brushing the floor. You lasted longer than I expected, she murmured. And you didn't ask for mercy once. Naruto didn't look up. Not asking you for anything. A faint, pained smile touched her lips. You already have, she replied. You asked for strength. And I intend to give it to you. She turned away, leaning heavily on Kabuto as another coughing fit took her halfway down the corridor. Naruto stayed on the floor long after they left, staring at his bleeding hands. He hated her. He hated this place. But for the first time in months, the pain felt like it was going somewhere. And that terrified him more than anything else. A month had passed since Naruto's arrival in Otogakure, and the underground lair had begun to feel less like a prison and more like a grim academy. The days blurred into a relentless cycle of training. Mornings spent pushing his body to its limits under Orochimaru's watchful eye, afternoons dissecting jutsu mechanics with reluctant sound ninjas, and nights poring over stolen scrolls in the dim light of his quarters. The curse mark had become a constant companion, its black flames no longer a painful intruder, but a tool he wielded with growing precision. He was changing, hardening, and he knew it. One afternoon, after a grueling session where he'd managed to infuse wind chakra into a Rasengan without it exploding in his face, Naruto wandered into the medical wing. The air there was sterile, sharp with the scent of herbs and chemicals. Kabuto was bent over a workbench, silver hair falling into his eyes as he meticulously prepared a series of syringes. A sound ninja lay on the table nearby, groaning from some experimental procedure gone wrong, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle. Chakra pathways visibly disrupted under Kabuto's diagnostic jutsu. Naruto leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Hey Specs, still playing doctor? Kabuto glanced up, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose with a gloved finger. His expression was neutral, but there was a flicker of annoyance. Uzumaki, shouldn't you be resting? Orochimaru-sama's regimen isn't for the faint-hearted. Naruto ignored the jab and stepped inside, eyes flicking to the injured ninja. You know, back in the Chunin exams you had everyone fooled, posing as a leaf genin, all helpful and innocent. Even Kakashi-sensei didn't catch on right away. How'd you pull that off? Deceiving a whole village like that? Kabuto's hands paused over the syringe. He set it down carefully, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Deception is an art, Naruto. I studied Konoha's customs, mimicked their mannerisms. People see what they want to see. You, of all people, should understand that the village's little secret. Naruto's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he watched as Kabuto turned back to the patient. With a surge of green chakra, Kabuto formed precise scalpels from his fingertips' ethereal blades of energy that sliced into the ninja's arm with surgical accuracy. No blood spilled. The chakra cauterized as it cut, realigning tendons and sealing ruptured vessels. The ninja's groans faded to sighs of relief as the arm straightened, function returning in minutes. Naruto's eyes widened. He'd seen Tsunade's medical ninjutsu in action, but this was different, efficient, almost cold. That's impressive. Chakra scalpels, right? You could kill with those just as easy as heal. Kabuto nodded, wiping his hands on a cloth. Precisely. Versatility is key in our line of work. Teach me, Naruto said abruptly. Kabuto raised an eyebrow. Why? You're a brute force fighter. Medical ninjutsu requires precision, control qualities you lack. Naruto stepped closer, determination etched on his face. I need every edge. The village, they threw me away. I won't be weak again. Besides, I've got the chakra for it. Uzumaki stamina, remember? Come on, Specs. What's the harm? Kabuto studied him for a long moment, then sighed. Fine. But this isn't charity. Orochimaru-sama might approve, but you'll owe me. Why learn medical ninjutsu? Kabuto asked as they began the first lesson later that day, demonstrating the basic chakra flow in a side chamber. Naruto didn't answer. He just focused on mimicking the green glow in his palm, ignoring the unspoken truth. Healing meant independence. It meant not relying on anyone, not Konoha, not Orochimaru. And if things went south, it meant he could patch himself up after a fight he might have to start. In the evenings, when the lair quieted, Naruto delved into Orochimaru's forbidden archives. The scrolls were a treasure trove stolen from clans across the nations, detailing jutsu long banned or forgotten. He learned the basics of Edo Tensei, the horrors of body-swapping rituals, the intricacies of curse seals. But one scroll, buried deep in a sealed vault he'd pried open with a shadow clone distraction, caught his eye. An ancient Uzumaki relic, diagrams of a grotesque mask etched in faded ink. The Shinigami mask, a forbidden artifact of his clan's sealing arts, capable of summoning the Death Reaper itself. The text detailed how souls and chakra sealed within the Reaper could be retrieved at a cost. A life for a life or something equally dire. Naruto's heart raced as he read. Arms sealed away, like Orochimaru's, could be pulled back, but it required a vessel strong enough to withstand the backlash. An Uzumaki body, perhaps. His body. That night, he approached Orochimaru in her private chambers. She sat at a low desk, bandaged arms trembling slightly, as she attempted to unroll a scroll with her teeth and elbows. Pain etched her features, but she masked it with that serpentine calm. "Experiment on me," Naruto said without preamble. Orochimaru looked up, golden eyes narrowing. "Bold, brat. What brings this on? I'm Uzumaki. My clan's built for this sealing, regeneration, all that. I want with style. Hashirama cells or whatever you did for Danzo. And medicine. Stuff to boost my training. On top of shadow clones I could push harder, recover faster." She tilted her head, amusement flickering. "With style? Ambitious. But why volunteer as my guinea pig? Because I need to be stronger than anyone. And you need a test subject who won't die on the table." From Orochimaru's perspective, this was a delicious complication. She had watched Naruto these past weeks. His raw potential blooming under pressure. The Ninetales chakra weaving seamlessly with her curse mark. He could become a monster, strong enough to rival her, to plot against her, to kill her. The thought thrilled her more than it should. Would he turn like so many before? Or would that stubborn light in him bend in unexpected ways? She decided to indulge him. Risk made the game worth playing. Later, she discovered he'd been rifling through her scrolls. Kabuto reported it casually. Traces of chakra on the seals. She didn't mind. Knowledge was a weapon. Let him arm himself. It would make the eventual confrontation all the sweeter. One evening, as Naruto recovered from an initial infusion, Hashirama cells grafted experimentally into his arm. A burning agony that left him sweating on his bed. She visited his room. She entered without knocking, settling on the edge of his desk with a faint grunt of pain from her arms. "You're learning quickly," she said, voice smooth. "Forbidden jutsu, Uzumaki secrets. Do you plan to kill me once you've taken all you can from me?" Naruto sat up, wincing as the graft throbbed. Her question hung in the air, but her tone was amused, intrigued. A smile played on her lips, genuine, almost playful, golden eyes gleaming in the lantern light. He met her gaze steadily. "Maybe, if you keep being a monster." She laughed softly, a sound like rustling scales. "Honest as always. That's what intrigues me about you, brat. No deception, just fire." Her smile widened. "And what of this Death Reaper seal mask you've been reading about? The Uzumaki artifact. Planning to retrieve something sealed away? My arms, perhaps?" Naruto hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. If it works, you get your arms back. But it's dangerous. Needs a strong vessel." Orochimaru leaned forward, smile turning sharp. "And you offer yourself? How touching. Or is it a ploy to gain my trust? Then strike?" He didn't answer. She didn't push. Instead, she rose, bandaged hand brushing his shoulder lightly. "We'll see, won't we? Keep learning. I look forward to what you become." For years later, Naruto Uzumaki stood in the heart of Otogekyure's expanded surface Villahea cluster of fortified buildings rising from the rice fields. No longer just a hidden lair, but a burgeoning settlement. His attire had evolved with him. A sleek black coat with high collar, edged in red Uzumaki spirals, over a mesh shirt that hid the intricate tattoos of experimental seals across his torso. His hair was longer, wilder, tied back in a short ponytail, and the curse marks patterns now formed deliberate scars on his neck, marks of control, not chaos. With style vines coiled subtly around his wrists like living bracers, a testament to the successful grafts. At 19, he was taller, broader, his blue eyes sharper, carrying the weight of forbidden knowledge and relentless growth. He met with the Sound Four in a central pavilion, maps and trade ledgers spread across a stone table. The village had grown under Orochimaru's ambitions and, increasingly, Naruto's input. Resources flowed in from shadowy alliances, but sustainability was key. We need to open trade routes, Naruto said, tapping a map of the land of rice fields. Not just smuggling. Legit stuff, rice exports, herbs from the labs. Hit up smaller nations first, like the land of hot water. Build alliances. Make Odo indispensable. Sakan grinned, his twin head nodding in sync. Smart. But who's gonna negotiate? You? With your believe it speeches? Kadamaru chuckled, 6 arms folding. Better than Tayuya. She'd curse them into submission. Jirobo snorted. Yeah, imagine. Sign the deal, you fat bastards, or I'll flute your ass to death. The group erupted in laughter, Naruto included, his voice booming. Tayuya flushed red, slamming her fist on the table. Oi, fuck off, you multi-limbed freaks. I could take all of you with one hand tied. Naruto waved her down, still grinning. Easy, Tayuya. We're joking. But seriously, trading means stability. No more relying on raids. We build this place right, and Odo becomes a real village. Not just Orochimaru's lab. Tayuya crossed her arms, muttering curses under her breath but with a reluctant smirk. Whatever, demon brat. Just don't go soft on us. The discussion continued, plans solidifying amid the banter. Naruto glanced toward the underground entrance, where Orochimaru's chambers lay. For years, and the tension remained a delicate dance of mentor and potential betrayer. But for now, he focused on building. On his terms. The stone corridors of Odogakure's underground complex had become as familiar to Naruto as the back alleys of Konoha once were. For years of relentless training, experimentation, and scheming had etched their layout into his mind like a well-worn map. He moved through them now with casual confidence, black coat swirling behind him, the red Uzumaki spirals on the hem catching the dim torchlight. The wood-style vines around his wrists shifted subtly, responding to his chakra like living extensions of his will. He carried a rolled-up scroll under one arm, trade projections and alliance proposals he'd sketched out after the meeting with the Sound Four. Orochimaru's private chambers were deeper in, sealed behind layers of barriers that parted for him with a simple pulse of his blood-infused chakra. He didn't knock, never had. The door slid open with a low grind, revealing the dimly lit room beyond. Shelves crammed with ancient tomes and glowing vials, a central desk cluttered with half-finished seals, and Orochimaru herself reclined on a cushioned chaise near the back wall, her bandaged arm still not fully recovered, even after all this time, rest in her lap, one holding a delicate porcelain cup of herbal tea that Kabuto had likely prepared. She looked up as he entered, golden eyes half-lidded, a faint smile already forming. Respect, brat, she said, her voice a smooth drawl laced with mock severity. But there was no real bite to it. She knew him too well by now, knew that formality was as foreign to Naruto as subtlety was to a Rasengan. He'd barge in like this, report like they were equals chatting over ramen, and she'd let him. It amused her, this lack of deference. In a way, it was refreshing amid the groveling of her other subordinates. Naruto grinned, dropping into a chair across from her without invitation. He kicked his feet up on the low table between them, ignoring the way it scattered a few loose papers. Yeah. Afternoon, Snake Lady. Or is it evening? Hard to tell down here without windows. She took a slow sip of her tea, bandaged fingers gripping the cup awkwardly but steadily. Report, then. I assume your little council with the Four went well? He unrolled the scroll, spreading it out on the table. Better than well. We're making progress on turning Odo into something real. Not just a hideout full of experiments and shadows. Trade routes are Kiwi got scouts mapping safe paths to the land of hot water and the smaller border towns in grass country. Rice exports from the fields above, plus those enhanced herbs Kabuto's been brewing. Non-lethal stuff, mostly. Builds goodwill. I've got deals lined up with a couple of merchant guilds. Nothing big yet, but it'll bring in resources without raids. Less heat from the big villages that way. Orochimaru's eyes scanned the scroll idly, though she didn't need to read it to grasp the details. Her network of spies had already fed her the gist. Ambitious. And the four? They didn't balk at playing diplomats instead of assassins? Naruto chuckled, leaning back. Nah. Sakan's all for its strategic evolution or some crap. Kadamaru thinks the extra arms will help with loading crates. Jirobo's just happy about more food imports. Taiyo, well, she cussed up a storm about going soft. But she's in. Joked about fluting the first merchant who lowballs us. A soft laugh escaped Orochimaru, though it ended in a faint cough she quickly suppressed. Predictable. You've molded them well, brat. Odo grows under your influence. Naruto shrugged, but there was a spark of pride in his blue eyes. It's not just mine. But yeah, it's working. He paused, studying her more closely. The room felt quieter than Uwalno bubbling vials. No restrained test subjects in the adjacent lab. The experimental hum that usually vibrated through the walls was absent. Speaking of growing, why'd you stop the experiments? The labs have been dead silent for weeks. No new graphs, no seal tests. Kabuto's been twiddling his thumbs. What's the deal? Orochimaru's smile didn't waver, but her gaze shifted to her tea, stirring it slowly with a bandaged finger. Idle curiosity doesn't suit you, Naruto. Focus on your trades and your strength. The experiments are on hiatus. Nothing more. He frowned, sitting up straighter. That's not an answer. You've been holed up in here more than usual. If it's your arms acting up again. Dismissed, she said sharply, setting the cup down with a clink. Her tone was light, almost playful, but the finality was there. She waved a bandaged hand toward the door. Go play village builder with your four. I have scrolls to review. Naruto stared at her, puzzled. That wasn't like her dodging questions outright. Orochimaru loved to weave words, to tease and manipulate. Avoidance? That was new. He opened his mouth to push, but she had already turned away, pulling a book toward her with careful movements. The conversation was over. He stood, rolling up the scroll with a frustrated huff. Fine. Keep your secrets. But if you're holding back because of whatever, don't think I won't notice. She didn't respond. He left the room, the door sealing behind him with a hiss. As he walked the corridors, his mind churned. Why avoid it? She wasn't one to shy from pain or failure. And the experiments, her life's work, her path to immortality stopped cold? It didn't add up. But there were bigger things on the horizon. The time was coming. The mask. The Shinigami mask of the Uzumaki clan. He'd pored over the scrolls for years now, piecing together the fragments Orochimaru had gifted him from her archives. It was hidden in the ruins of his parents' old house on the outskirts of Konoha, sealed in a blood-bound vault that only an Uzumaki descendant could open, courtesy of Kushina, his mother, her final safeguard, woven into the foundation with her own chakra and blood. No one else could enter without being torn apart by the seals. Orochimaru had told him about them 2 years ago, during one of their late-night talks in the labs. She'd been overseeing a graph session, then infusing more Hashirama cells into his system, the pain like fire in his veins. To distract him, or perhaps to plant seeds, she'd spoken casually of his heritage. Your father was the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, she'd said, golden eyes watching his reaction as Kabuto monitored his vitals. The yellow flash, genius seal master, and your mother Kushina Uzumaki, the previous Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Fiery red hair, unbreakable chains. They sacrificed everything for that village. Sealed the fox in you on the night of your birth, after Obito Akihonder, the mask of Madara, leader of the Akatsuki at the time, extracted it from her and unleashed it on Konoha. She died holding the beast back long enough for your father to complete the seal. Naruto had frozen mid-grit, the pain forgotten in a surge of raw emotion. What? The old man Hiruzen never told me. Jiraiya neither. Why hide it? Orochimaru had smiled then, bandaged hands folding neatly. Protection, they claimed. The 4th had enemies' entire village's worth. The Hidden Stone, in particular, despises him. He slaughtered thousands of their shinobi during the Third War. single-handedly turned battles. If word got out you were his son, assassins would have come for you before you could walk. He'd been angry then furious. At Hiruzen, the kindly old man who'd bought him ramen and smiled through the lies. At Jiraiya, his godfather, who'd wandered the world collecting research instead of telling him the truth. They sacrificed everything for the village, Naruto had muttered, fists clenching as the graft burned. And the village spat on me for it. Why not tell me? I could have, I don't know, honored them or something. Orochimaru had merely shrugged. Sentiment clouds judgment. Or perhaps they feared you'd become a target. Either way, the truth was buried deeper than the fox in your gut. Now, as Naruto paced a training chamber alone, slamming Razengans into reinforced walls to vent his frustration, those words circled back. Orochimaru had pointed out the hate from the hidden stone, logical, factual. But why? It almost sounded like she was defending Hiruzen and Jiraiya, explaining their reasons, protecting the old man's memory, in a twisted way. But that served her nothing. She could have twisted it, painted them as cowards, manipulators, fuel for his rage against Konoha. She could have used it to bind him tighter to her side, make him hate the village more. Why not manipulate him with this? It was prime material for her games. The next day he confronted her about it. Barged into her chambers again mid-afternoon, while she was reviewing a stack of intelligence reports from her spies. You could have used it, he said bluntly, standing over her desk. The stuff about my parents. The Akatsuki leader Obito or whatever killing my mom. Unleashing the fox. Hiruzen hiding it all. You told me straight. No spin. You even mentioned the Stone Village hating my dad as a reason they kept quiet. That's defending them. Why? You hate the old man. Killed him yourself. Twisting that info would have made me hate Konoha more. Bound me to you tighter. So why not? Orochimaru looked up slowly, golden eyes gleaming with amusement. A smile spread across her pale face, sharp, genuine, like a snake spotting prey that had just become interesting. Perceptive, brat, she murmured, leaning back. But some truths are sharper left unbent. Perhaps I simply enjoy watching you forge your own path, unguided by my hand. He crossed his arms, not buying it. Bull. Everything you do has an angle. Her smile widened, but she said nothing more. Just waved him off again, turning back to her reports. The mask awaits. Prepare for your retrieval. And remember, blood opens doors, but power keeps them shut behind you. Naruto left more puzzled than before. She was holding back in experiments on manipulations. Why? The question gnawed at him as he prepared for the mission to Konoha. Sneak in, fetch the mask from the sealed ruins of his parents' house. Get out. Simple but loaded with ghosts. Otogakure hummed with activity above ground, trades beginning to flow. But underground secrets simmered. And Naruto, stronger than ever, wondered if Orochimaru's games were evolving her, if she was playing a longer one than he realized. 0000000000000000000. Naruto moved like a shadow through the moonlit rice fields surrounding Otogakure's surface village. The night air was thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming night flowers, crops he'd helped cultivate through trade deals and experimental growth serums from the labs. He didn't tell anyone he was leaving. No notes, no farewells. Just a quick pack of essentials slung over his shoulder. A few kunai, sealing scrolls for supplies, and a map etched from memory. The mask, the Shinigami mask of the Uzumaki clan, called to him like a whisper in the back of his mind. It was time. He'd infiltrated tougher places in the past 4 years. Konoha would be no different. He paused at the edge of the village perimeter, glancing back once. The lights from the new barracks flickered warmly, laughter echoing faintly from a group of sound ninjas sharing sake around a fire. His influence, he knew. Otogakure wasn't just a den of experiments. Anna Maria was alive, buzzing with purpose. Traders haggled in the markets during the day, kids trained in open fields without fear of reprisal, and even the hardened operatives like the Sound Four had softened edges, cracking jokes instead of throats. But he couldn't linger. The mask was the key to Orochimaru's arms, perhaps, or something more. He vanished into the tree line, chakra suppressed to a whisper, heading west toward the land of fire. Back in the underground lair, Orochimaru felt his departure like a subtle shift in the air currents her senses, honed by years of survival, picked up the faint ripple of his chakra fading into the distance. She sat in her chambers, a fresh cup of tea cooling untouched on the desk beside her. Kabuto entered moments later, his glasses reflecting the dim lantern light, a report scroll in hand. Orochimaru-sama, he said, voice measured. Uzumaki has left the village. Alone. No signs of preparation or communication. The perimeter sensors confirm it. She didn't look surprised. A faint smile curved her lips as she leaned back, bandaged arms resting heavily in her lap. A cough bubbled up from her chest, deep, persistent. The sickness that had plagued her since the Reaper seal clinging like a stubborn shadow. She ignored it, swallowing it down with a grimace that she masked as indifference. The pain was constant now, a dull fire in her limbs and lungs, but she pushed it aside. There were greater games afoot. Let him go, she murmured, golden eyes distant. Do not follow. Do not interfere. Kabuto hesitated, adjusting his glasses. But if he, no intentions toward him at all, she interrupted softly, her smile widening into something almost fond. I want to see who he becomes, truly becomes. Without my hand guiding or restraining. What will he do to the leaf? Will he burn it? Spare it? Use that mask to retrieve what was taken from me or something else entirely? She chuckled, a low rasp that ended in another suppressed cough. The brat is nosy-always poking through my scrolls, questioning my methods. I don't mind it. Keeps things interesting. Kabuto nodded slowly, though concern flickered in his eyes. The hideout, it's changed. Booming with something I can't quite define. The ninjas adore him, always clustering around him in the training halls, sharing stories, laughing. Even the four defer to his ideas now. It's his influence, isn't it? Orochimaru's gaze drifted to the wall, where a map of the shinobi world hung, marked with her ambitions. Yes, vitality, hope perhaps, or delusion. Otogekyure pulses with it now, trades flowing, alliances budding. He hasn't broken yet, that stubborn light in him unyielding. But only time will tell if it shatters or burns brighter. She waved Kabuto away with a bandaged hand. Leave me. I will wait and watch. As Kabuto exited, she leaned her head back, ignoring the ache in her body. The sickness persisted, gnawing at her edges, but she dismissed it like an annoying fly. Naruto was her most fascinating experiment, yet not one of flesh and seals, but of will. She smiled into the empty room, patient as a serpent in wait. The journey to Konoha took 3 days of careful evasion, dodging patrols from minor villages, crossing rivers under cover of night, suppressing his chakra to evade sensors. Naruto moved with purpose, his mind a whirlwind of questions. Why had Orochimaru been so straightforward about his parents? Why stop the experiments? Why avoid his probes? He shook it off. Focus on the mask. The ruins of his parents' house lay on the outskirts of Konoha, hidden in a forested valley long abandoned after the Nine-Tails attack. Sealed by Kushina's blood, only an Uzumaki could enter without triggering the wards. He arrived under a stormy sky, rain pattering softly on the leaves. Konoha's walls loomed in the distance, but he skirted them, slipping into the valley like a ghost. The house was a crumbled shell overgrown with vines, foundation cracked, but the basement vault hummed with residual chakra. He bit his thumb, smeared blood on the sealed door, and whispered the incantation from the scrolls. The wards parted with a sigh, revealing a small chamber lit by eternal sealing flames. There it was, the Shinigami mask, resting on a pedestal, grotesque and ancient, carved from pale bone-like material with hollow eyes that seemed to stare back. Not a scroll, as he'd half expected from fragmented memories, but the artifact itself. He sealed it into a storage scroll on his wrist, heart pounding. This could change everything, retrieve Orochimaru's arms, perhaps even souls from the Reaper. But for what price? Alarms blared in his mind, sensors had tripped on entry. Konoha ninjas were coming. He emerged from the ruins to find them waiting. A squad of ANBU, masked and poised, with Kakashi Hitaki at the front, Sharingan uncovered beneath his Hitaiate. Rain slicked their gear, turning the ground to mud. Intruder 1 ANBU barked. Surrender the artifact. Naruto stepped into the open, coat billowing in the wind. He was stronger now, 4 years of forbidden training, with style flowing through his veins, curse mark integrated like a second skin. He smiled, calm and easy, movements graceful as he raised his hands in mock surrender. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei," he said, voice light, almost cheerful. "Long time no see." Kakashi stiffened, eye widening. "Naruto, we thought you're alive." The ANBU charged 3 at once, kunai flashing, one unleashing a water jutsu that turned the rain into spears. Naruto didn't flinch. With a flick of his wrist, with style vines erupted from the ground, coiling around the attackers with effortless precision. He dodged a slash with a fluid sidestep, grace in every motion, and countered with a chakra-enhanced palm strike that sent one ANBU flying into a tree. Another came from behind. He spun, Rasengan forming in his hand infused with wind. It whirred like a storm and dispersed it just short of impact, the shockwave alone knocking the ninja back. All the while he smiled. Calm. Ease. No rage, no desperation. Just control. Kakashi joined the fray, Chidori crackling in his hand, lightning illuminating the rain. "What happened to you, Naruto? Why are you here?" They clashed. Chidori met Rasengan in a burst of energy that shook the valley. Naruto held his ground, pushing back with steady force. "I really need this, Kakashi," he said conversationally, as if they were sparring in the old days. "The mask Uzumaki heirloom, you know? Don't have time to catch up, but hope you're doing well. See ya." With a surge of chakra, he vanished, body flicker enhanced by Ninetales speed reappearing at the valley's edge. The ANBU tried to pursue, but wooden barriers sprouted like walls, blocking their path. Kakashi stared after him, rain masking the shock on his face. Naruto was gone, melting into the storm. The return to Otogakure took another 3 days, uneventful save for the weight of the sealed mask against his wrist. Questions swirled. What would he do with it? Heal Orochimaru? Use it for himself? And the leaf, had he just declared war by taking it, or was it a quiet theft? He arrived at dusk, the village lights welcoming him like an old friend. Kadamaru and Tayuya were lounging near the entrance, sharpening weapons and bickering over some trivial bet. They spotted him immediately. "Oi, demon brat," Tayuya called, standing with a smirk. "Where the hell you been? Vanished like a ghost. We were about to send out scouts." Kadamaru's 6 arms flexed curiously. "Yeah, boss lady said not to follow, but you've been gone a week." "Bill." Naruto grinned, rubbing the back of his neck. "Snuck into Konoha. Grabbed something from my folks' old place, the Uzumaki mask. Long story. I'll talk later, gotta report in first." They exchanged glances, Tayuya cursing under her breath. "Konoha? Ballsy. Fine, go. But you owe us details over sake." Naruto nodded, heading underground toward Orochimaru's chambers. Naruto's footsteps echoed softly through the dimly lit corridors as he made his way deeper into the underground heart of Otogakure. The sealed scroll containing the Shinigami mask felt heavier than it should against his wrist, a weight not just of bone and ancient chakra, but of decisions yet to be made. He'd slipped back into the village without fanfare, nodding off Kadamaru and Tayuya's questions with promises of later explanations. But there was no later for this. Not yet. He needed to see her first. The barriers to Orochimaru's chambers parted for him as always, recognizing the familiar pulse of his chakra intertwined with the curse mark she'd given him so long ago. The door slid open with a hushed grind, revealing the room bathed in the warm, flickering glow of a single candle on her bedside table. The air was thick with the scent of medicinal herbs and incense, Kabuto's doing, no doubt, to ease her persistent cough and the ever-present pain. Orochimaru lay propped against pillows on her large, canopied bed, a rare concession to her weakening state. Her long black hair fanned out across the dark silk sheets, and her golden eyes were half closed, staring at some distant point on the wall. The bandages on her arms were fresh, but the faint stains of seepage told him the Reaper's toll was still exacting its price. She didn't look up immediately as he entered, but he knew she sensed him. Her awareness was as sharp as ever, even if her body betrayed her. Naruto moved nonchalantly, as if this were just another casual visit. He kicked off his sandals at the door out of habit, something she chided him about once, years ago, and padded across the cool stone floor. Without a word, he sat on the edge of her bed, the mattress dipping slightly under his weight. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and stared at the candle's flame for a long moment. It danced erratically, casting shifting shadows across the room, mirroring the turmoil in his mind. The wax had melted low, pooling in the holder, a slow burn toward nothing. Finally, he turned to meet her eyes. Those golden slits regarded him with quiet curiosity, no surprise in them. She'd known he would come. She always knew. "I got it," he said simply, unsealing the scroll from his wrist with a flick of chakra. The mask materialized in his hand, grotesque, ancient, its hollow eyes seeming to absorb the candlelight rather than reflect it. The Shinigami mask, from my parents' old place. Blood-sealed, just like the scroll said. Orochimaru's lips curved into a faint, weary smile. "Efficient as always, brat. And Konoha? Did they roll out the welcome mat?" He snorted softly. "Ran into Kakashi and some ANBU. Nothing I couldn't handle." He set the mask on the bedside table, next to the candle, and leaned back slightly, his blue eyes locking onto hers. There was a pause, heavy with unspoken things. Then, seemingly begrudgingly, he opened up, his voice low and rough. "I know if I give you this, if I do this, you might kill a lot of people because of me. Get your arms back, ramp up the experiments again, twist more lives. I know what you're capable of. Hell, I've seen it firsthand, the tanks, the screams, the progress you call it. Part of me thinks I should smash this thing right now, seal it away forever, or use it for something else, something better." His words hung in the air, raw and honest. Orochimaru watched him, her expression unreadable, but inside, questions swirled. This boy this man now, had grown into something extraordinary under her roof. He held the key to her restoration in his hands, a power that could unlock not just her arms but souls from the Reaper's belly. He could use it to bargain with gods, to retrieve legends from death, to reshape the world in his image. Why waste it on her? The snake who had bitten the hand of his village, who had marked him, manipulated him, and stood as a shadow over his life? She, who might indeed harm others, once restored, continue her quest for immortality. Her village of science unbound by ethics. Puzzled her, this choice. Intrigued her. Made her question the core of him. That unyielding light she'd tried to dim but only seemed to fuel. Naruto shifted, reaching out gently. He took her bandaged hand in his cool skin against his warm palm and helped her sit up straighter against the pillows. She allowed it, though her body protested with a faint tremor. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice a soft rasp, interrupted by a wet cough that she tried to stifle into her free hand. Phlegm flecked her lips, and she wiped it away with a grimace, golden eyes narrowing in warning. He ignored the question, his touch careful as he began to unwrap the bandages from one arm. Layer by layer, the stained cloth peeled away, revealing the raw, sealed stumps where the Reaper had claimed its due. The skin was mottled, angry red and purple, chakra scars pulsing faintly like dying embers. Orochimaru tensed, but didn't pull away. "I might do terrible things if you do this, Naruto," she warned, using his name for the first time in ages. Not brat. Not mocking, but direct. A rare vulnerability in her tone. "You know me. Power returned, I won't stop. Villages will burn. Secrets will be torn from the unwilling. Why risk it?" He continued unwrapping, gentle despite the calluses on his fingers from years of training. As the last bandage fell away from her second arm, she swayed slightly from the effort of sitting up, her head falling forward onto his shoulder. The contact was unexpected, her cool cheek against the warmth of his coat, her hair brushing his neck. She smelled of herbs and faint decay, the sickness clinging to her like a shroud. Naruto froze for a fraction of a second, then steadied her with one arm around her back, holding her there as if it were the most natural thing. She warned him again, her voice muffled against his shoulder, weaker now. Don't do something you'll regret, Naruto. This mask, it's not just for arms. You could summon back heroes, villains, your parents even. Change everything. Why me? Why heal the monster? He smiled, Thena's small, genuine curve of his lips, blue eyes soft in the candlelight. He didn't answer with words. Instead, he pulled out the scroll with the ritual details, ancient Uzumaki script he'd memorized and transcribed. Biting his thumb, he drew blood, smearing it across the mask's surface in precise seals. Chakra flared, red and raw, the air thickening with the weight of forbidden jutsu. The room grew colder, shadows lengthening as the Shinigami's presence began to manifest a spectral chill that made the candle flame gutter. Orochimaru studied him in silence as he worked, her head still resting on his shoulder. Questions flooded her mind, unbidden and unfamiliar. This kid, her investment, her potential rival, could do so much more with this artifact. Resurrect the fourth to claim his legacy. Pull back the third to confront his lies. Even extract the souls of the damned to build an army. Why use it on her? The one who had orchestrated so much pain, who might indeed harm innocence once whole again. She searched his face for deception, for a ploy, but found only that stubborn resolve, that infuriating kindness wrapped in strength. It didn't make sense. She was a tool to him, perhaps, but this act felt more like trust or forgiveness or something she couldn't name. Her golden eyes traced the lines of his jaw, the focus in his brow as he channeled chakra into the mask. The jutsu built, humming with power, the Reaper's grin seeming to widen on the artifact. Naruto's hands moved steadily, seals forming, blood mixing with chakra in intricate patterns. The room vibrated with energy, the candle flames stretching tall and thin. Orochimaru's breath came shallower, her cough suppressed as she watched, questions turning to a quiet awe. Why him? Why this path? She leaned a little heavier against him, not from weakness alone, but from the weight of the moment. The jutsu neared completion, the air crackling with impending release. And still he smiled. 0.0000000000000000000. The ritual reached its crescendo. The Shinigami mask hovered in the air between Naruto's blood-smeared palms, its hollow eyes glowing with an otherworldly violet light. A spectral wind whipped through the chamber, snuffing the candle and plunging the room into near darkness save for the eerie glow of the artifact. Orochimaru felt at first the cold, inexorable pull of the Death Reaper's presence brushing against her soul like icy fingers. Her breath hitched, but she didn't pull away from Naruto's steadying arm around her back. She simply watched him, golden eyes wide with something that wasn't quite fear, wasn't quite gratitude, but a complex mixture of both. Naruto's voice was low and steady as he chanted the final Uzumaki incantation, the words ancient and guttural, drawn from memories of scrolls he'd memorized over years. His chakra flared red from the Nine Tails, green from the wood style grafts, blue from his own vast reserves, all weaving together into the mask's seals. The stumps of Orochimaru's arms began to burn, not with the familiar dull ache of loss, but with a sharp, tearing sensation as reality itself seemed to fracture. Then, in a rush of shadow and light, they returned. Flesh and bone knit from nothing, pale skin, long fingers, the faint purple markings around her eyes mirrored in subtle veins along her forearms. The new arms materialized fully formed, as if the Reaper had simply relinquished its claim. Orochimaru gasped, a rare, unguarded sound, as sensation flooded back. The cool silk of the sheets under her fingertips, the weight of her own hair brushing her wrists, the throb of blood circulating freely once more. The mask fell dark and inert. Naruto caught it before it hit the floor, sealing it away with a tired flick of his wrist. The room's temperature slowly returned to normal. The candle relit itself with a spark of his chakra, casting warm light over them both. Orochimaru stared at her hands, flexed them experimentally, marveling at the absence of pain. The persistent cough that had racked her for years eased almost immediately, the sickness that had eaten at her lungs receding like a tide pulled back by the moon. Color returned to her cheeks. Her breathing deepened, steady and strong. Naruto didn't say anything triumphant. He simply shifted, supporting her weight as she sagged slightly from the overwhelming rush of restoration. With careful, practiced movements medical ninjutsu he'd coaxed out of Kabuto over long night she channeled soft green chakra into her torso, soothing inflamed pathways, knitting microscopic damage the Reaper had left behind. His palms glowed gently against her collarbone and sternum, the healing precise and unhurried. "You're clear," he murmured finally, voice rough with fatigue. "No more rot in the lungs. Circulation's perfect. You'll be sore for a day or two, but you're whole." Orochimaru tested her arms again, lifting them slowly, marveling at the fluidity. She looked at him, really looked, and for once, no clever quip rose to her tongue. Only a quiet, "Why?" He shrugged, a tired half-smile tugging at his lips. "Because I could. And because I wanted to see what you'd do next." He helped her settle back against the pillows, pulling the heavy blankets up to her shoulders with the same gentle care he might have shown a younger sibling. She was already drifting toward exhausted sleep. Restoration on this scale took a toll on the body, even one as resilient as hers. Naruto sat on the edge of the bed for a while longer, watching the rise and fall of her chest, the way her new fingers curled slightly in the sheets. The room was quiet, peaceful in a way Otogekyure's depths rarely were. Eventually he stood, leaned down and brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. An unconscious gesture. He didn't even register. Then he left, pulling the door closed softly behind him. Kabuto was still away on the mission she'd sent him on weeks earlier. A discreet rendezvous with Sasori of the Akatsuki, gathering intelligence on their movements specifically, which Jinchuriki they planned to target next. Orochimaru had wanted early warning. Naruto had simply nodded when she told him. The labs were quieter without Kabuto's constant presence, but the village above ground ran smoothly in his absence. Naruto emerged from the underground corridors into the cool night air of the surface settlement. The village was small still, just a cluster of sturdy wooden buildings, storehouses, a training field, and a handful of inns and shops, but it was growing. Lanterns hung from posts, casting golden pools of light on the dirt streets. A few late-night vendors called out to passing ninjas, selling grilled skewers and warm sake. The rice fields beyond rustled softly in the breeze. He found them exactly where he expected. Tayuya, Kimimaro, Kadamaru, and Sakan/Yukon lounging outside one of the newer barracks, sharpening weapons and passing a bottle of something strong between them. They'd become his routine, his brothers and sister, as he'd started calling them half-jokingly one drunk night a year ago. The name had stuck. None of them had ever cared about the nine tails sealed inside him. To them, he was just Naruto the loudmouth who dragged them into trade negotiations, who sparred until they dropped, who somehow made this place feel like home. "Oi, there's the ghost," Tayuya called, red hair tied back messily, a smirk on her face. "Thought you'd hold up with the boss lady forever. What did you do, read her a bedtime story?" Kimimaro glanced up from polishing his bone sword, pale green eyes calm but warm. "You look tired." Kadamaru chuckled, 6 arms folded lazily. "Yeah, and you smell like old seals and blood. Successful trip?" Naruto grinned, walking over and slinging an arm around Tayuya's shoulders on one side and Kimimaro's on the other. Tayuya squawked in protest but didn't shrug him off. Kimimaro just allowed it with quiet amusement. "Come on," Naruto said, steering them toward the main street. "Let's go grab drinks. My treat. Boss lady's sleeping like a baby, and I need something that burns going down." The bar was a simple affair, one large room with low tables, paper lanterns, and a long counter made from polished ricefield wood. It had opened only 6 months ago, run by an ex-mercenary and his wife who'd settled here after a trade caravan. It was rarely empty these days. They claimed a corner table, ordered 2 large bottles of sake and a round of grilled fish, and settled in. Conversation flowed easily, the way it always did with them. They talked about the village first, how the new irrigation channels Naruto had designed with wood style were already boosting rice yields. How the next caravan to the land of hot water would carry twice the herbs thanks to better packing methods Sakan had suggested. Tayuya complained about the stupid merchants who think they can haggle me down, and Kadamaru bragged about the new archery range he was building. Then the topic shifted to Kabuto's mission. "Akatsuki's getting bolder," Kimimaro said quietly, sipping his sake. Sasori's not the type to share information freely. Kabuto will need to be careful. Naruto nodded, staring into his cup. Yeah. They're after Jinchuriki. We knew that. If they come sniffing around here, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The others understood. This was their home now. They'd fight for it. Tayuya leaned back, stretching. Let them come. I'll flute their eardrums out. Laughter rippled around the table. The mood lightened again. Eventually, inevitably, it turned into a chug battle, Tayuya slamming her cup down and daring Naruto to keep up. He accepted with a wide grin. The two of them racing through cup after cup while the others cheered and placed bets. Kimimaro watched with a rare, genuine smile softening his usually stoic face. Sakan/Yukon heckled from both sides. Kadamaru kept score with chalk on the table. Naruto's mind wandered, even as he laughed and coughed sake. One day, this place would grow sprawl across the rice fields, draw more settlers, more ninjas seeking something different than the great villages offered. It wouldn't be ignored forever. The 5 great nations would notice, and when they did, whether with trade offers or threatened fight for his new home. This one had never thrown stones at him. The thought of returning to Konoha still lingered at the back of his mind. A quiet ache he didn't indulge tonight. Kakashi's face in the rain. The shock in his old sensei's eye. Sakura's absence. Sasuke's unknown fate. The village that had raised him and rejected him in equal measure. But tonight, surrounded by warmth and laughter and people who called him brother without hesitation, he pushed it aside. He raised another cup, clinking it against Tayuya's. To Otogekure, he said. They echoed him, voices overlapping in easy camaraderie. And for the first time in years, Naruto felt like he belonged somewhere without having to prove it every single day. The first hints of dawn filtered through the narrow ventilation slits high in the underground complex, painting faint gray stripes across the stone floors. Naruto woke early. As he often did these days, years of relentless training had burned any lingering teenage laziness out of him. His small room was quiet, the distant sounds of the surface village just beginning to stir above. He stretched, feeling the familiar hum of chakra in his limbs, the subtle shift of wood-style vines coiled dormant around his wrists. Kabuto was still away on his mission to rendezvous with Sasori. That left the deeper levels quieter than usual, the labs empty of the silver-haired medic's constant note-taking and dry commentary. Naruto didn't mind. It gave him space to think and to act. He stopped by the communal kitchens first, assembling a simple breakfast tray. A bowl of steaming rice porridge flavored with herbs, fresh fruits from the surface fields, plum persimmons, crisp apples, a handful of late-season berries, and a large pitcher of cool water infused with mint leaves. Nothing fancy, but nourishing. Healing on the scale he'd performed last night demanded fuel, and he doubted Orochimaru had eaten properly in weeks. Tray balanced carefully in one hand, he made his way to her chambers. The barriers parted for him without resistance. He'd long ago been keyed into most of the seals. The door opened silently. Inside, the room was dim and still. The single candle had burned out hours ago, leaving only the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi along the walls. Orochimaru lay asleep on her side, blankets pulled up to her chin. Long black hair spilled across the pillows like spilled ink. Even in sleep she looked regal, but there was a softness to her features now, the sharp edges dulled by exhaustion and the slow, deep work of her body knitting itself back together. Naruto set the tray on the bedside table with care, the faint clink of porcelain barely disturbing the quiet. He pulled the chair closer, but instead of sitting in it, he simply perched on the edge of the bed again, the mattress dipping slightly under his weight. He watched her for a moment, blue eyes thoughtful. She stirred almost immediately, predatory instincts never fully asleep. Golden eyes opened slowly, blinking once, twice, before focusing on him. For a heartbeat she looked disoriented. Then memory returned. She shifted experimentally, trying to push herself up, but her newly restored arms trembled and ached fiercely, muscles long and used protesting the sudden demand. A faint wince crossed her face. Naruto was there instantly, one arm sliding gently behind her shoulders to help her sit upright against the pillows. "Easy," he murmured, You're gonna feel like you got hit by a summon for a couple days. Everything's mending, but it's a lot. Orochimaru allowed the assistance, though her pride flickered in her eyes. Once settled, she looked at him fully, and a slow, almost wondering smile curved her lips. Still here, brat? I half expected you to vanish into the night after your dramatic gesture. He shrugged, reaching for the tray. Kabuto's off playing spy. Someone's gotta make sure you don't waste my hard work by starving. She studied him as he arranged the food within reach, that smile lingering but laced with something more complicated. She didn't understand him, had never truly understood the choice he'd made last night. The mask could have been leverage, a bargaining chip, a weapon turned against her. Instead, he'd used it to restore the very person most likely to cause chaos with renewed power. It scared her, if she were honest with herself. Not the physical threat was strong, but she had always known how to handle strength. No, what unsettled her was the expectation in his actions. Kindness extended without demand. Trust offered to someone who had never earned it in the traditional sense. She had no template for how to respond, no script for being in someone's debt in this way. Naruto dipped a spoon into the porridge, blowing on it gently before offering it. She took it herself stubbornly, her hands shook slightly. While she ate slowly, he channeled soft green medical chakra into her shoulders and upper arms, easing the deep muscle aches, encouraging blood flow. You asked me once why I bothered learning medical ninjutsu, he said quietly, not looking up from his work. Back when I was pestering Kabuto for lessons. I remember, she replied, voice still a little hoarse from disuse and residual illness. You never gave a straight answer. He huffed a small laugh. Yeah, well, I told myself it was practical. Always good to patch yourself up in a fight. Uzumaki stamina plus healing unstoppable combo, right? He paused, green glow steady under his palms. But I watched you sometimes. Late nights, coughing so hard you couldn't stand straight. Bandages soaking through. Experiments on hold because you couldn't hold a scalpel steady. I saw Kabuto running himself ragged, keeping you stable. He met her eyes then, unflinching. I didn't like it, so I learned. Partly for me, partly in case the day came when Specs wasn't around and you needed it. Orochimaru stilled, spoon halfway to her mouth. The admission hung between them, simple and devastating in its honesty. She recovered quickly, masking the flicker of emotion with dry amusement. A fool, she said softly, wasting effort on someone who will only cause trouble once recovered. Naruto grinned, switching to the fruit. He sliced a persimmon neatly and held a piece to her lips when her weak fingers fumbled the knife. She glared, but accepted it anyway. Yeah. Big scary Sanine promises hell the second she's back on her feet. I'm shaking. There was real amusement in his eyes, now warm, daring, utterly unafraid. She felt that strange fear again. The weight of his faith in her potential for something beyond monstrosity. Conversation drifted to heavier things as he fed her berries and made sure she drank. Itachi and Kisame will come eventually, he said quietly. Maybe Kakuzu and Haiden too. Akatsuki's moving faster on the Jinchuriki. I'm the closest loose one. Orochimaru's expression sharpened. And I'll leave before they get here, he replied, matter of fact. Draw them away. Fight them somewhere else. I won't let anyone in this village get hurt over me. For a moment, her features shifted, something raw and unguarded flashing across her face. Protectiveness? Regret? It was gone as quickly as it came. He caught it anyway and laughed softly, trying to lighten the air. Don't worry, Snake Lady. You won't lose your favorite lab rat. I'll come back in one piece. Her smile returned, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. See that you do. When the tray was empty, he eased her back down against the pillows. But he didn't leave. Instead, he sat beside her, taking one of her hands in his and gently massaging the fingers and forearms low. Methodical circles to work out lingering stiffness and encourage circulation. His touch was practiced now, confident. Random stories spilled out of him as he worked. Tayuya's latest explosive rant at a merchant who tried to shortchange them. Kidomaru's new six-armed archery trick that had accidentally felled an entire training dummy rack. Kimamaru's quiet dry humor emerging more often during sparring sessions. Orochimaru listened in silence, eyes half closed, letting the warmth of his hands and the easy cadence of his voice wash over her. It was peaceful, a rare, fragile thing in her long life. The door slid open eventually. Kabuto stepped in, travel dust still on his cloak, a sealed scroll in hand. He paused at the sight. Naruto perched on the bed, both hands gently working Orochimaru's fingers, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. Kabuto's lips twitched in unmistakable amusement. I leave for a few weeks and return to find the Jinchuriki playing nursemaid. Should I be concerned? Naruto glanced up, mock frowning. Oi, right on time, Mr. Specs. Go away. Patient needs rest. Kabuto adjusted his glasses, smirk widening. Of course. Far be it from me to interrupt such tender care. He bowed slightly to Orochimaru. Mission report when you're ready, Orochimaru-sama. Akatsuki intelligence as requested. As he turned to leave, he added over his shoulder, try not to spoil her too much, Naruto. She'll expect daily massages once she's mobile. Get lost. Naruto called after him, laughing despite himself. Kabuto's soft chuckle echoed down the corridor as the door closed. Orochimaru watched the empty doorway for a moment, then turned her gaze back to Naruto's hands on hers. Fool, she murmured again. But there was no venom in Itonly, something quieter, warmer. He just grinned and kept massaging, stories flowing on into the morning light. The late afternoon sun filtered through the narrow slits in the underground lab's ventilation shafts, casting elongated shadows across the cluttered workbenches. The air was thick with the scent of crushed herbs, bubbling solutions, and the faint metallic tang of chakra-infused compounds. Naruto sat hunched over a low table, surrounded by stacks of ancient scrolls and half-unrolled parchments. His longer hair fell into his eyes as he pored over diagrams of advanced sealing techniques, Uzumaki relics mixed with Orochimaru's forbidden modifications. The cursed mark on his neck pulsed faintly, a reminder of how far he'd come, how intertwined his power was with this place. Across the room, Kabuto moved with his usual elegant precision, silver hair catching the dim light as he mixed herbal drugs in a series of glass vials. His hands danced like a conductor's measuring powders with exacting care, stirring solutions until they turned a vibrant emerald green. He glanced up occasionally, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose, but said nothing at first. The silence was comfortable, routine. They'd worked like this before, Kabuto on his medicines, Naruto on his studies, each lost in their own pursuits. After a while, Kabuto broke the quiet, his voice dry and mildly amused. I thought you had run away, he said, not looking up from his work. Vanishing for days, returning with that mask and now playing caretaker. It's almost domestic. One might think you've gone soft. Naruto didn't look up immediately, his pen scratching notes on a scrap of paper. He snorted softly, a half-smile tugging at his lips. Run away? Nah, Specs. Just handling business. Besides, someone's got to keep this place running while you're off schmoozing with puppets. He paused, glancing over. And soft? Try me in the training hall later. I'll show you soft. Kabuto chuckled under his breath, a rare sound from the stoic medic. Noted. He returned to his mixing, the clink of glass the only sound for several minutes. They worked in companionable silence after that, Naruto cross-referencing seal patterns, Kabuto decanting his latest batch of regenerative serums. It was a rhythm they'd fallen into over the years. Mutual respect born from shared secrets and survival. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Orochimaru entered. She moved with renewed grace, her long black hair swaying behind her like a dark cloak. The restoration from the night before had worked wonders. Her arms, once bandaged stumps, now flexed smoothly at her sides, though a faint stiffness lingered in her posture. She wore a simple dark yukata, practical for the labs, and her golden eyes scanned the room with sharp focus. She was checking on her medicine, seeking acceleration for her recovery. The sickness that had plagued her was gone, but full strength would take time, muscles rebuilding, chakra pathways realigning. She approached Kabuto first, peering over his shoulder at the vials. Progress? She asked, voice smooth but expectant. Kabuto nodded, handing her a small sample tube. The new formula incorporates Hashirama cells from the grafts we tested on Naruto. It should expedite tissue integration by 20%. For you perhaps faster. Good, she murmured, swirling the liquid before setting it down. Then she turned, gliding silently to stand behind Naruto. He felt her presence before he saw her cool, commanding, like a shadow with intent. She leaned over slightly, one newly restored hand pointing to a diagram on his scroll. You missed the auxiliary binding here, she said softly, finger tracing a faint line he'd overlooked. It stabilizes the feedback loop. Without it, the seal could unravel under high chakra pressure like the Ninetales output. Naruto blinked, then nodded, jotting a quick note. Ah, good catch. Thanks. Orochimaru's lips curved faintly. She lingered for a moment, her presence a quiet approval, before straightening. Kabuto handed her a sheaf of papers, the report from his mission, prepared upon his return. It detailed Sasori's intel, Akatsuki movements, timelines for Jinchuriki hunts, whispers of their next targets. She took it without a word, tucking it under her arm. I'll review this in my chambers, she said, turning to leave. Continue. The door closed behind her, leaving the lab in silence once more. Naruto returned to his reading, flipping through pages on advanced with style applications, his mind already piecing together new combinations. Kabuto resumed his work, the two of them settling back into the quiet hum of productivity. Then, without warning, a sudden boom echoed through the complex, deep and resonant, like thunder cracking stone. The ground trembled slightly, vials rattling on shelves. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Naruto and Kabuto froze, eyes meeting across the room. Understanding passed between them in an instant. An attack. Intruders. The surface alarms would be blaring by now. Kabuto stood smoothly, glasses flashing. I'll warn the villagers. Evacuate the non-combatants. Naruto nodded, already on his feet, coat swirling. Got it. I'll handle the source. They moved as one, Kabuto dashing toward the surface tunnels, Naruto heading deeper toward Orochimaru's chambers. The booms continued, muffled explosions from above, likely breaching the outer barriers. Naruto burst into Orochimaru's room, the door slamming open. The scene inside made his blood run hot. Team 7 Sakura, Sasuke, Kakashi and an unfamiliar face, a pale boy with dark hair and an emotionless stare, stood in a loose formation. Naruto guessed his replacement in the team, Root's emotionless puppet. They were poised for battle, weapons drawn, chakra flaring. Orochimaru stood in the center, still reviewing the report, but her golden eyes were sharp, ready. The intruders had blown through the seals, somehow likely Kakashi's Sharingan or Sasuke's enhancements. Naruto entered casually, as if interrupting a casual chat, but his eyes hardened. He crossed the room in 3 strides, standing firmly by Orochimaru's side. She glanced at him, a faint surprise in her expression, but accepted his arm as he helped her stand taller, subtle support, not weakness. The anger built in Naruto like a storm. These people, his old team, his old village barging in, threatening the fragile peace he'd built. Odogakure wasn't perfect, but it was home. Now they'd have to relocate, find another lair, uproot the villagers he'd helped settle. The thought fueled a cold fury. With a surge of chakra, his wind-style jutsu erupted, Raisin Shuriken forming in his palm, but he twisted it, channeling it upward. The ceiling exploded in a whirlwind of debris and stone, opening a jagged hole to the surface above. Orochimaru leaped gracefully to the lip of the new opening, perching like a serpent ready to strike. Naruto joined her in a flicker of body movement, standing beside her, looking down on the intruders from their elevated perch. His voice was low, laced with displeasure. You just couldn't leave us alone. Huh? Barging into our home like this, interrupting everything we've built. Kakashi stepped forward, Sharingan spinning. Naruto, we're here to end Orochimaru, and to bring you back home. This isn't you. Home? Naruto echoed, a bitter laugh escaping. What home? The one that threw stones at me? Spread rumors until I couldn't walk the streets? This is my home now, the one you've ruined by infiltrating like cowards. Kabuto appeared then, slipping in from a side passage, his presence a silent reinforcement. He stood below but ready, chakra scalpels flickering at his fingertips. Naruto glanced at Orochimaru and Kabuto. I've got this, he said flatly. Go. Make sure the villagers are safe. I need to handle them, make sure they never dare mess with our home again. His emotions vanished behind an expressionless mask, blue eyes cold, face blank as root training. No grin, no fire, just calculated resolve. Orochimaru watched him, golden eyes narrowing. His fury was palpable, a raw force she'd seen glimpses of before but never so directed, so protective. It intrigued her, thrilled her, even. This was the potential she'd planted the curse mark for. Not blind rage, but focused power. A small smile tugged at her lips, satisfaction mingling with a rare flicker of concern. He was defending her, defending them. It was almost touching, but she nodded, leaping away toward the surface to coordinate defenses. Kabuto followed, leaving Naruto to face his past. The confrontation hung in the air, tension thick as the dust settled. Naruto descended slowly, chakra coiling like a storm ready to break. This wasn't about old bonds anymore. It was about protecting what he'd chosen. 000000000000000. The tension in the shattered chamber was thick enough to choke on. The air heavy with dust and the metallic scent of ozone from Naruto's wind-style blast. The jagged hole in the ceiling let in slivers of afternoon sunlight from the surface, illuminating the faces below. Kakashi, mask pulled down, Sharingan whirling in a mix of shock and wariness. Sakura, fists clenched, green eyes wide with a storm of emotions, relief, anger, betrayal. Sasuke, Sharingan active, his expression a cold mask but his stance betraying the faintest tremor of uncertainty. And Sai, the newcomer, ink brush already in hand, face blank as a canvas but eyes calculating every angle. Naruto stood above them on the lip of the opening, his black coat fluttering in the updraft, red Uzumaki spirals catching the light like bloodstains. His expression was utterly neutral, no grin, no fire, just an expressionless mask that hid the fury boiling beneath. This wasn't about revenge or showboating. It was about sending a message, protecting what he'd built. He leaped down lightly, landing in the center of the room with a soft thud that echoed like a judgment. Last chance, he said quietly, voice devoid of its usual warmth. Leave, now. Kakashi raised a hand, placating. Naruto, listen. But Sasuke moved first, ever the impulsive one. His Chidori crackled to life, blue lightning dancing across his arm as he blurred forward in a burst of speed. It was a test probing Naruto's defenses, seeing if the years had dulled the loudmouth genin he'd once known. Naruto didn't even form a seal. With a casual sidestep, graceful, effortless, avoided the strike, his hand snapping out to grab Sasuke's wrist mid-thrust. Chakra surged through his grip, with style vines coiling from his sleeve like living ropes, wrapping around Sasuke's arm and pinning it in place. Sasuke grunted, twisting to activate his curse mark, black patterns spreading across his skin for extra power. But Naruto was leagues ahead. He channeled a pulse of Ninetales chakraed and raw through the vines, disrupting Sasuke's flow. The Uchiha's eyes widened as he felt his strength ebb, forced to his knees with a pained gasp. Holding back already? Naruto murmured, almost to himself. He wasn't going all out, not yet. This was a demonstration, not slaughter. But it hurt physically for Sasuke, emotionally for the rest. Sakura charged next, her medical knowledge making her strikes precise and chakra-enhanced. Naruto, stop this, we your friends. Her fist swung like a battering ram, aimed at his midsection with enough force to crater stone. He caught it one-handed, the impact sending a shockwave that cracked the floor beneath them. Her eyes met his, pleading, furious. Friends? He echoed softly. Friends don't drive you out. He twisted her arm gently but firmly, using a medical ninjutsu reversal to numb her chakra points temporarily. She staggered back, arm limp, pain shooting through her nerves, not permanent, but enough to sideline her. She dropped to one knee, clutching her shoulder, tears pricking her eyes. Sai moved in tandem, ink beasts leaping from his scroll tigers and birds, animated and snarling. Target acquired, he said flatly, brush flying. The creatures swarmed Naruto, claws and beaks aimed to overwhelm. Naruto exhaled slowly. A Rasengan formed in his palm larger than before, infused with wind chakra that made it whine like a saw blade. He spun, the sphere expanding into a whirlwind that shredded the ink constructs mid-air, black splatters raining down like defeated shadows. Sai leaped back, but Naruto was faster. Body flicker closing the gap. A single, restrained punch to the Guchikradul to avoid killing sent Sai crumpling against the wall, winded and coughing ink. Kakashi was last, the sensei stepping in with Raikiri blazing. You've grown strong, he admitted, voice steady but laced with regret. But this path, it's not yours. Naruto met the charge head-on. Their jutsu clashed Raikiri against a barrier of compressed wind chakra, sparks flying. Kakashi pressed, Sharingan predicting moves, but Naruto was unpredictable now. Years of forbidden training, curse mark integration, with style graphs making him a hybrid force. He held back, matching Kakashi blow for blow, testing limits. Feint here, a parry there. Finally, he surged forward, a wood-style root erupting from the ground to trip Kakashi mid-step. As the Jonin stumbled, Naruto drove a knee into his side restrained, but hard enough to crack ribs. Kakashi hit the wall, sliding down with a groan, book tumbling from his pouch. The fight was over in minutes. Team 7 lay scattered hurt, breathing heavily, but alive. No fatal wounds. Naruto had held back somehow, quietly defeating them by showing his strength. Leagues ahead, untouchable in ways they couldn't comprehend. He stood over them, expression still blank, but his chakra flared, red eyes flickering for a moment as Kurama's influence seeped through. Never look for me again, he said, voice low and final. I found a home, one the leaf never provided. Friends who don't whisper behind my back. A place that doesn't fear what I am. Sakura pushed herself up, voice breaking. Naruto, please, come back. He turned away, but paused at the edge of the opening. His killing intent washed over them, then rivaling Kurama's. A primal, overwhelming pressure that made the air heavy, hearts race, knees weaken. It wasn't blind rage. It was a warning, cold and deliberate. If you come here again or send anyone, I won't hold back next time. With that, he leaped up through the hole, vanishing into the light. Outside, chaos reigned. The surface village was in disarray, barriers breached, buildings smoking from explosive tags. Villagers, merchants, families, sound ninja swear already evacuating under Kabuto's direction, guided to hidden tunnels. Naruto landed amid the fray, but the intruders were dealt with. His fight below had been the core. He formed a dozen shadow clones with a seal, dispersing them into the surrounding forests. Find us a new hideout, he ordered mentally. Somewhere defensible, deep in the mountains near water. Scout and report back. The clones nodded and vanished in puffs of smoke. Naruto found Orochimaru and the others at the village edge. The sound for rallying stragglers, Kabuto overseeing medical aid for minor injuries. Orochimaru stood tall, arms crossed, golden eyes scanning the horizon. She turned as he approached, a faint smile on her lips impressed by his handling. Intrigued by the fury she'd glimpsed. Handled? She asked. He nodded, expression softening slightly now that the threat was gone. Yeah. They'll think twice. The group gathered villagers, ninjas, a caravan of wagons loaded with essentials. Everyone followed as they set out. Orochimaru leading with Kabuto at her side. Naruto walking among the sound for, villagers trailing in an orderly line. The rice fields gave way to dense forests, the path winding toward the unknown. As they walked, conversation murmured. Tayuya griped about those leaf bastards ruining my favorite bar. Kimimaro scouted ahead quietly. Kidamaru joked about building an even better village next time. Naruto listened, a quiet resolve settling over him. This was his family now. His home, mobile, resilient. They'd rebuild. Stronger. One clone returned hours later, whispering coordinates of a promising cave system in the northern mountains, defensible, hidden, with natural springs. They adjusted course. The journey stretched into the night, a procession of shadows seeking renewal. Naruto glanced back only once, at the distant smoke of their old home, then forward to whatever came next. The days blurred into a steady rhythm of labor and renewal as the group settled into their new hideout. Naruto's shadow clones had scouted it thoroughly before the caravan arrived. A vast, secluded valley nestled deep in the northern mountains of the land of rice fields, far from the prying eyes of the great villages. The location was perfect defensible cliffs on three sides, a roaring waterfall cascading into a crystal-clear river that snaked through the valley floor, providing fresh water and natural barriers. Dense forests cloaked the entrances, and hidden caves dotted the rock faces, ideal for underground expansions. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and mist, a far cry from the humid rice paddies of their old home. They'd arrived at dusk 3 days ago, weary from the march but buoyed by the promise of the sight. Orochimaru had approved it with a nod, her golden eyes scanning the terrain for strategic value. Adequate, she'd murmured, though Naruto caught the faint spark of approval in her voice. The villagers' merchants, families, and sound ninjas alike had set up temporary camps along the riverbank that first night, fires flickering under the stars as stories of the leaf attack circulated in hushed tones. No one blamed Naruto. If anything, his swift handling of the intruders had elevated him further in their eyes. He was their protector now, the one who'd turned Otogekure from a shadow into something tangible. The first week was a whirlwind of activity, everyone pitching in with a sense of urgency born from displacement. Naruto threw himself into the work with relentless energy, his with style proving invaluable. By dawn on the second day, he'd already begun construction. Standing atop a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley, he formed the familiar seal's hands clapping together as chakra surged through him. Green tendrils erupted from the ground, twisting and growing into sturdy wooden beams, walls, and roofs. The headquarters took shape first, a multi-level stone and wood fortress built into the side of the river cliff, perched high enough to command a view of the entire valley. Water from the nearby stream was channeled through cleverly designed aqueducts he'd woven from living vines, providing running water to the structure. The waterfall's mist added a natural camouflage, shrouding the building in a perpetual haze during the day. To speed things up, Naruto relied on his shadow clones dozens at a time, popping into existence with puffs of smoke. Some clones used teleportation jutsu to ferry supplies from hidden caches they'd stashed during the evacuation. Crates of tools, fabrics, and preserved food zipped back and forth in flashes of yellow light, a nod to his father's legacy that he wielded with growing ease. Other clones worked on the finer details, carving doors, reinforcing foundations with earth-style infusions, even planting quick-growing gardens around the base to blend the structure into the landscape. By midday, the headquarters was livable. Spacious labs in the lower levels, Orochimaru's private chambers at the top with a balcony overlooking the waterfall, and communal areas for meetings and rest. Down in the valley, Naruto expanded his efforts. The villagers needed homes, proper ones, not tents. He moved methodically, sectioning off plots along the riverbank where the soil was fertile. Wood-style houses rose like living things. Simple but sturdy cottages with thatched roofs grown from interwoven branches, each tailored to the family's needs. A widow with 3 children got a larger space with extra rooms. A group of young sound ninjas shared a barrack-style building with a training yard attached. He incorporated natural elements, vines for trellises, river stone for foundation stone, make the village feel organic, harmonious with the valley. By the end of the 3rd day, over 24 homes stood complete, smoke curling from chimneys as families moved in, their gratitude evident in the way they waved or offered him fresh-baked bread from scavenged supplies. The work was exhausting, even for him. Naruto's days started before dawn, meditating by the waterfall to center his chakra, then diving into construction. Meals were quick rice balls and fruit grabbed on the go, interrupted by clones dispelling and flooding him with memories of progress and minor setbacks, like a beam warping under too much moisture. But he thrived on it, the physical labor a balm against the lingering anger from the leaf's intrusion. This was creation, not destruction. A new beginning. Kabuto was equally busy, His elegant efficiency a counterpoint to Naruto's brute force creativity. He'd claimed a section of the headquarters' lower caves for the labs, transforming damp stone into sterile workspaces. Vials and beakers were unpacked with care, herbal mixtures brewed in fresh batches to restock their medical supplies. He worked long hours, adjusting formulas for the new environment's humidity, preparing serums to accelerate Orochimaru's lingering recovery and boost the villagers' stamina after the trek. By the fourth day, he'd set up a small clinic in one of the valley houses, treating minor injuries from the move sprains, cuts, fatigue with his signature chakra scalpels and poultices. Efficiency is key, he'd mutter to himself, glasses glinting as he labeled shelves. The Sound Four threw themselves into the fray with their usual mix of bravado and competence. Tayuya and Kadamaru handled the villagers' immediate needs, organizing furniture distribution from the wagons, hauling beds and tables into the new homes, and barking orders with a rough charm that kept things moving. Tayuya's flute hung at her side, unused for once, as she haggled with a few reluctant families over room assignments. "Oi, this ain't a resort, take the one by the stream or sleep in the dirt," she'd snap, but always with a smirk that softened the edge. Kadamaru's 6 arms made him a one-man moving crew, stacking crates effortlessly while cracking jokes about finally getting a room with a view that doesn't include Tayuya's snoring. Sakan/Yukon focused on negotiations, reestablishing contacts with nearby border towns through coded messages sent via summoned birds. They bartered for fresh supplies, tools, fabrics, seeds for the gardens. "We'll have trade flowing again in a week," Sakan promised, his twin head nodding in agreement. Kimimaro, ever the stoic enforcer, took on the most critical task. He slipped away on the second day, reconnecting with their suppliers and trade benefactors, shadowy merchants in the land of hot water and grass country, who'd benefited from Otogekyure's herbs and intel. Moving like a ghost through the forests, he renegotiated deals, ensuring caravans would reroute to the new location. By the 5th day, he returned with the first delivery. Wagons of lumber, rice, and medicinal plants, his pale face impassive but his report detailed. "Loyalties hold," he said simply. "They value our discretion." Orochimaru, despite her improved condition, arms strong, cough gone, energy returning, chose to focus on the administrative backbone. She set up in her new chambers, a stack of scrolls and ledgers spread across a wooden desk Naruto had grown for her. Paperwork was her domain, mapping resource allocations, drafting new security protocols, analyzing Kabuto's Akatsuki report for threats. She worked methodically, her restored fingers flying across parchment with elegant script. The move had invigorated her. Color bloomed in her cheeks, and her golden eyes gleamed with purpose. Still, she paced herself, resting when fatigue tugged at her edges. Naruto made a habit of checking in, occasionally showing up unannounced, as was his way. On the 3rd evening, he appeared with a steaming cup of herbal tea Kabuto had brewed, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her desk. "Headquarters is solid," he'd report, voice casual but detailed. "Added watchtowers with vine alarms. Anyone sneaks in, it'll snag 'em like a web. Valley houses are half done. Families are settling in. No complaints so far." She'd nod, setting down her brush. "Efficient. And the defenses? Layered seals around the perimeter. Me Uzumaki tweaks on your old ones. Water from the falls powers a mist genjutsu, hides the whole valley from outsiders." He'd grin then, leaning back. "We're good here. Better than before." Orochimaru would smile faintly, studying him over the rim of her tea. "You've outdone yourself, brat." Their talks stretched late, sometimes progress updates turning to strategy, her probing his thoughts on the leaf, him sharing laughs about Tayuya's latest outburst. It was a quiet partnership, built on mutual respect amid the chaos. By the end of the week, the valley hummed with life. Smoke rose from chimneys, children played by the stream, and the waterfall's roar became a comforting backdrop. Naruto stood on the headquarters balcony one twilight, overlooking it, all houses dotting the valley like jewels, labs buzzing below, villagers waving as they passed. It was small, raw, but there's a new Otogekyure rising from the ashes, and Naruto, for the first time in years, felt the weight of home settle firmly on his shoulders, not a burden, but a purpose. The valley had begun to feel like home again, the new Odogekure rising from the mists of the waterfall with a vitality that surprised even Naruto. A week had passed since the relocation, and the initial frenzy of construction had settled into a productive hum. Houses dotted the valley floor like sturdy mushrooms after rain, their wooden frames grown from Naruto's with style and reinforced with stone from the cliffs. The headquarters loomed above it all, a testament to his efforts. Balconies overlooking the river, labs buzzing with Kabuto's experiments, and Orochimaru's chambers perched high like a serpent's nest. Villagers moved with purpose. Children splashing in the shallow streams, merchants setting up stalls with fresh goods from Kimimara's re-established trade routes, and sound ninjas drilling in the open fields under the Sound Four's watchful eyes. But not everything was complete. Orochimaru had summoned Naruto to her chambers that morning, her voice carrying that familiar rasp of command even as she recovered. She sat at her desk, papers spread before her, golden eyes sharp as she outlined the next phase. "We need reinforcements," she'd said simply, handing him a sealed scroll. "Yurin. She's been operating independently in the Eastern Borders Crystal Jutsu specialist. Loyal but temperamental. Bring her back." And the boy Orochimaru. His abilities could prove useful. Naruto had nodded, tucking the scroll into his coat. "On it. Anything else?" Orochimaru's lips curved faintly. "Don't flirt too much. She bites." He'd grinned, unrepentant. "Who, me? Nah, I'll be a perfect gentleman." Now, 2 days later, Naruto trekked through the dense eastern forests of the land of rice fields, far from the valley's safety. The air was thicker here, humid and laced with the scent of blooming wildflowers and distant rain. His black coat blended with the shadows, red spirals hidden under a simple traveler's cloak for discretion. He'd used a combination of shadow clones and teleportation jutsu to cover ground quickly. Clones scouting ahead, relaying positions before dispelling, allowing him to flicker forward in bursts of chakra. It was efficient, but draining. By midday, he'd arrived at the coordinates Orochimaru had provided. A hidden encampment in a crystalline grove, where jagged quartz formations rose like frozen waves from the earth. Yurin was there as expected. She stood amid the crystals, her blue hair tied back severely, pink eyes narrowing as she sensed his approach. She wore her usual dark attire, a crystal kunai already forming in her hand, sharp, translucent, ready to shatter flesh. Orochimaru, the young boy with the unique Kekkei Genkai to control the Three Tails power, sat nearby on a rock, playing with a small flower, his innocent face lighting up at the sight of Naruto. "Big brother Naruto," Orochimaru exclaimed, jumping up and running over. The boy had always seen Naruto that way ever since their paths crossed years ago during one of Orochimaru's experiments. Naruto knelt, ruffling the kid's hair with a genuine smile. "Hey, squirt. Missed me?" Yurin, however, was less welcoming. She crossed her arms, crystal kunai dissolving back into nothingness, but her glare could have cut glass. "What are you doing here, Uzumaki?" Orochimaru-sama didn't mention sending her pet fox. Naruto stood, slinging Orochimaru onto his back, piggyback style, boy giggling and wrapping his arms around Naruto's neck. "Ouch, big sis. Pet fox? That's cold. And here I thought we had something special." Yurin's eye twitched. She didn't like him, never had. He'd risen quickly in Orochimaru's favor, closer to the Sannin than she'd ever been despite her loyalty and unique crystal release. It grated on her, this loud orange-clad, now black-clad, upstart who flirted shamelessly just to rile her up. "Don't call me that," she snapped, cheeks flushing slightly despite herself. "What do you want?" Naruto's grin widened, blue eyes twinkling with mischief. He stepped closer, leaning in just enough to invade her space without touching. "Ah, come on, Yurin. You know you love it. Big sis with the killer crystal's prettiest weapon in Odo. We need you back. Boss lady's orders. And bring the kid, he's family now." She huffed, turning away to hide the faint blush. "Flattery won't work on me, idiot. And Orochimaru stays with me." Orochimaru peeked over Naruto's shoulder, smiling shyly. "I want to go with big brother and Yurin mama." Yurin softened at that, her protective instincts for the boy always her weak spot. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Fine. but only because Orochimaru-sama needs me. Not you. Naruto laughed, adjusting Yukimaru on his back. Deal. Let's move long walk back. The journey back to the new hideout took the better part of 2 days. A winding path through forests and over misty hills to avoid patrols. Naruto talked the entire way, his voice a constant stream of chatter that filled the silence like sunlight piercing clouds. Yukimaru rode happily on his back, occasionally dozing against Naruto's shoulder, thrilled to see his big brother again. The boy peppered him with questions about the new village. Is there a big waterfall? Can I play in the river? And Naruto answered with exaggerated tales, making Yukimaru giggle. Guren walked beside them, arms crossed, trying to maintain her stoic facade, but occasionally cracking a reluctant smile at Naruto's antics. He flirted shamelessly, just to get under her skin. You know, big sis, that crystal jutsu of yours is something else. Like diamonds in the rough. Kinda like U-sharp edges, but beautiful when the light hits right. She'd roll her eyes, swatting at him half-heartedly. Shut up, Uzumaki, or I'll encase you in quartz and leave you as a statue. But as the miles passed, conversation turned more serious. Around a campfire the first night, with Yukimaru asleep curled in Guren's lap, Naruto stared into the flames and opened up about the attack. The leaf found our old base, he said quietly, poking the fire with a stick. Team 7 Kakashi, Sakura, Sasuke, and some new guy, Sai, blew through the barriers, came straight for Orochimaru-sama. Guren's eyes narrowed, crystal fragments glinting in the firelight as she formed a small shard absent-mindedly in her hand. And, you let them live? Naruto nodded, expression hardening. Yeah. Beat 'em down but held back. Told them to stay away. This place our homites, not theirs to touch. But we had to move. Uproot everything. Villagers, labs, all of it. She studied him, the flirtation forgotten for a moment. You're angry. Damn right, he admitted, voice low. I built that place. We all did. Trade starting, kids playing without fear. And they just barge in like it means nothing. Because I'm the demon brat who ran off with the snake. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. But anger won't fix it. We're rebuilding stronger. New valley hidden better. You'll see Yukimaru love the waterfall. Guren was silent for a long beat, turning the crystal shard in her fingers. Orochimaru-sama, she's well? Better than ever, Naruto said, a small smile returning. Got her arms back. No more coughing. She's back to scheming full tilt. Guren's expression softened slightly. Loyalty to Orochimaru ran deep. Good. She needs us all now, with Akatsuki sniffing around. The next day, as they crested the final hill overlooking the valley, Yukimaru bounced excitedly on Naruto's back. Look, Guren mama. It's so pretty. The new Otogakure sprawled below. Wooden houses along the river, headquarters gleaming in the sunlight, villagers waving as they spotted the trio. Orochimaru waited at the entrance, Kabuto at her side, a faint smile on her lips. Welcome back, she said, eyes flicking to Guren. We have work to do. Naruto set Yukimaru down, the boy running to explore. He clapped Guren on the shoulder. Told ya, big sis. Home sweet home. She elbowed him, but there was no real heat in it. Idiot. As they integrated Guren setting up crystal barriers, Yukimaru playing with the village kids, Naruto felt the pieces falling into place. The family grew. The home endured. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. 000000000000000000000. The valley thrummed with the sounds of progress under the midday sun, the waterfall's distant roar providing a constant, soothing backdrop to the organized chaos below. 2 weeks had passed since Guren and Yukimaru's arrival, and the new Otogakure was evolving from a makeshift settlement into a thriving hidden village. The initial frenzy of basic construction had given way to refinements, bridges spanning the river for easier access, reinforced structures to withstand potential attacks, and small luxuries that made the place feel less like a fortress and more like a home. Naruto, ever the driving force, had thrown himself into the work with his usual boundless energy, his shadow clones multiplying the effort tenfold. That morning, Naruto stood at the river's edge, hands forming familiar seals as chakra surged through him. Dozens of clones popped into existence around him, each one identical in their determined grins and black coats. "All right, team," the original Naruto barked, pointing across the rushing water. "Bridges first. Make sturdy wood-style bases with stone reinforcements. We need 3, 1 for the main path to the headquarters, 1 for the eastern fields, and 1 downstream for the training grounds." The clones nodded in unison and got to work. Green tendrils erupted from the riverbanks, twisting and growing into arched frameworks of thick, living wood. Branches interwove like latticework, forming railings and supports that blended seamlessly with the natural landscape. To add durability, they layered in earth-style chakra, pulling up river stones and embedding them into the structure for added weight and resistance to erosion. The bridges took shape quickly, one clone directing the growth, another smoothing the surfaces for safe footing, a third testing the load by jumping across with exaggerated bounces. Laughter echoed as one clone slipped on a wet stone and splashed into the river, dispelling in a puff of smoke, only for the memories to flood back to Naruto, who chuckled and shook his head. Guren watched from a distance at first, her pink eyes narrowed in appraisal. She'd integrated into the village swiftly, her crystal release proving invaluable for fortifications. Orochimaru had tasked her with reinforcing key structures, and she'd taken to it with quiet efficiency. Now, as Naruto's clones completed the basic frames, she stepped forward, her blue hair catching the sunlight. "Not bad, Uzumaki," she called, voice laced with her usual skepticism. "But wood alone won't hold against a real assault. Let me handle the reinforcements." Naruto turned, flashing his trademark grin. "Big sis, perfect timing. Show him how it's done." Guren rolled her eyes at the nickname but didn't protest as vehemently as before. Perhaps the journey back had worn down some of her edges. Or maybe Yukimaru's fondness for Naruto was rubbing off. She formed seals of her own, chakra flaring as translucent crystals bloomed from her palms. With precise gestures, she directed the growth. Sharp, durable quartz lattices weaving into the wooden arches, adding a shimmering, unbreakable layer. The crystals caught the light like prisms, turning the bridges into functional works of art, beautiful yet deadly, capable of reflecting jutsu or shattering under controlled command to trap intruders. One of Naruto's clones tested it by slamming a chakra-enhanced fist against the railing. The wood flexed, but the crystal held firm, not a crack in sight. "Not too shabby," Naruto admitted, clapping her on the shoulder. "You're making this place sparkle literally." Guren shrugged off his hand, though a faint smirk tugged at her lips. "Just doing my part. Unlike some people who flirt instead of focus." He laughed, undeterred. "Hey, multitasking is my specialty." With the bridges complete, Guren moved on to the headquarters. The massive structure, perched on the cliffside overlooking the valley, was already impressive, multi-leveled with balconies and hidden passages, but it needed her touch for the interiors. Inside the main labs and meeting halls, she conjured crystal tables and workbenches. Smooth, multifaceted surfaces that could withstand chemical spills or chakra experiments. In the strategy room, she formed a large crystal map table, embedding faint glowing veins that could be manipulated to display terrain illusions. Kabuto, busy unpacking crates of vials nearby, nodded appreciatively. "Impressive durability. These will hold up well." Guren simply hummed in response, her focus sharp as she reinforced walls with thin crystal linings, subtle armor against breaches. By late afternoon, as the sun dipped toward the horizon and painted the waterfall in golden hues, Naruto took a well-earned break. He'd dismissed most of his clones after the morning's work, the flood of memories leaving him with a mild headache but a sense of accomplishment. One project had been personal. A cozy house he'd built specifically for Guren and Yukimaru, nestled on a gentle slope near the river's bend. It was modest but thoughtful: 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen area, and a porch overlooking the stream. He'd used his wood style to shape it from a massive oak-like tree he'd grown on the spot, the walls textured like natural bark but smooth inside for comfort. Naruto lay sprawled on the roof, legs dangling over the edge, swaying lazily as he stared at the clouds drifting by. The roof was slanted just enough for comfort, grown with a soft mossy layer for padding. He chewed on a blade of grass, hands behind his head, letting the day's fatigue melt away in the warm breeze. Guren approached from below, Yukimaru trailing behind her with a handful of wildflowers he'd picked. She spotted him immediately, her expression a mix of exasperation and curiosity. "Uzumaki," she called up, hands on her hips. "Get down from there. What are you doing on my roof?" Naruto sat up slowly, peering over the edge with a lazy grin. "Just admiring the view, big sis. Your new pad's got the best spot in the valley." He swung his legs around and dropped down lightly, landing with a soft thud in front of her. Yukimaru beamed up at him, thrusting the flowers forward. "For you, big brother." Naruto ruffled the boy's hair, accepting the bouquet with mock seriousness. "Thanks, Squirt. These'll brighten up the place." He turned to Guren, gesturing grandly at the house. "Come on, let me show you around. I put in some extras." Guren eyed him suspiciously but followed as he led them inside. The interior was warm and inviting, wooden floors polished smooth, walls insulated with woven vines for soundproofing. He'd even added futons in the bedrooms, scavenged from the supply wagons and arranged neatly with fresh linens. In the small bathing area, Naruto had outdone himself. Using his earth and water manipulation, he'd built a pipeline system drawing from the nearby hot springs. Twin faucets, one for steaming hot water, one for cool river flow fed into a simple stone basin. "Hot baths on demand," he explained, turning the hot tap to demonstrate. Steam rose lazily, filling the air with a mineral scent. "Figured after all that traveling, you two could use some pampering." Yukimaru's eyes widened in delight. "Wow, it's like magic." Guren crossed her arms, her pink eyes scanning the setup. There was a softness in her gaze, though gratitude she wasn't quick to voice. She sighed, shaking her head. "You didn't have to do all this, idiot. But thanks." Naruto's grin softened into something genuine. "Hey, you're part of the family now, big sis. Gotta make sure you're comfortable." As dusk fell, Yukimaru yawned, rubbing his eyes. "Good night, big brother Naruto," he said sleepily, hugging Naruto's leg. Naruto picked him up effortlessly, spinning him once for a giggle before setting him down. Then, with a mischievous wink at Guren, he looped one arm around her waist and pulled her into a quick, one-armed hug alongside Yukimaru. "Good night, you two. Sleep tight and let the crystal bugs bite." Guren stiffened, flushing red. "Let go, you," but Yukimaru's laughter cut her off, and she relented with a huff, muttering her own reluctant goodnight. Naruto released them, waving as they headed inside. He watched for a moment, the house's lantern light flickering warmly through the windows. Then, with a satisfied nod, he turned and headed up the path toward the headquarters. Orochimaru would want an update progress on the bridges, Guren's contributions, the village's morale. The stars were emerging overhead, the waterfall's mist cooling the air. As he walked, Naruto felt a quiet contentment settle in. This place, this family was worth every effort. And tomorrow the work would continue. The sun had dipped low over the misty valley, casting long shadows across the new Odogekure as Naruto made his way up the winding stone path to the headquarters. The day's work had been grueling, bridges reinforced with Guren's crystals gleaming in the fading light, houses settling with the soft creak of new wood, and the constant hum of villagers adapting to their fresh start. His muscles ached in that satisfying way that came from honest labor, but his mind was restless. Guren's reluctant thanks still echoed in his ears, Yukimaru's laughter a bright spot in the evening. He needed to update Orochimaru, keep her in the loop on the progress, as he always did. It had become routine, these evening check-ins, a way to ground himself amid the chaos of rebuilding. The headquarters loomed above, its wooden facade grown seamlessly into the cliffside, vines curling like natural decorations around the entrances. Naruto slipped through the main doors, nodding to a pair of sound ninjas on guard duty. The corridors were quieter at this hour, the labs below humming faintly with Kabuto's late experiments, but the upper levels held a serene hush. He climbed the stairs two at a time, the red spirals on his coat catching the lantern light, until he reached Orochimaru's chambers. The door was ajar, a rare oversight, or perhaps an invitation. He pushed it open gently, the hinges whispering in the still air. Inside, The room was bathed in the warm glow of several lanterns, their flames dancing softly against the wooden walls. Naruto had shaped himself. Orochimaru sat at her large desk, positioned near the balcony that overlooked the waterfall. Scrolls and parchments were spread before her like a battlefield map, inked with neat columns of figures and notes. Reports on the trade alliances Kimimaro had re-established, updates on supplier negotiations from Sakan/Yukon, even sketches of potential expansion routes into neighboring minor nations. The hidden Soundotagakure was no longer just a lair. It was a burgeoning power, its alliances fragile but growing, fueled by herbs, intel, and the subtle web of influence Orochimaru wove. She didn't look up immediately, her long black hair cascading over one shoulder as she traced a line on a parchment with a slender finger. Her restored arms moved with fluid grace, no trace of the bandages or weakness that had once defined her. The sickness was a distant memory now, her pale skin glowing with renewed vitality. But Naruto's entrance didn't escape her notice. Her golden eyes flicked up briefly, acknowledging him with that serpentine awareness she always carried. Naruto stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click. He scanned the room out of habit, everything in place, no threats, just the quiet order she preferred. On the table beside her desk sat a bowl of fresh fruits. Apples, persimmons, berries from the valley gardens. He grabbed an apple without asking, the crisp red skin cool against his palm, and sank into the chair across from her. Exhaustion hit him then, a wave that made his shoulders slump. He bit into the apple with a crunch, the sweet tart juice bursting on his tongue, then set it down and let his head drop onto the table, arms folding beneath as a makeshift pillow. His ponytail splayed across the wood, eyes half-lidded as he stared at the grain patterns. From Orochimaru's perspective, the sight was both familiar and profoundly strange. She set down her brush slowly, leaning back in her chair to study him, the boy who had become a man under her roof, yet still carried that unyielding spark of the brat she'd marked in the forest of death all those years ago. How far he'd come. The scrawny, loud genin with no grace, no strategy, just endless defiance and a fox's rage sealed in his gut. Now here he was, taller, broader, his body honed by forbidden jutsu and relentless training. With style vines coiled subtly around his wrists like living jewelry, the curse marks patterns etched into his skin as deliberate scars rather than a curse. He'd rebuilt her village not once, but twice, turning shadows into structures, fear into loyalty. His choices surprised her even now. He'd had every opportunity to betray her. The mask could have been his weapon against her, the leaf's attack his excuse to run back to old bonds. Yet he'd chosen to stay, to heal her, to fight for this place. Why? She, the monster, the traitor, the one who'd killed his Hokage and marked his skin. His loyalty wasn't blind, it was deliberate, baffling in its purity. It made her question her own cynicism, this persistent light in him that refused to dim, even as he grew stronger, darker around the edges. She watched him for a long moment, the apple's half-eaten core forgotten beside his head. Then softly she spoke. You border on the inexplicable, Naruto. Why are you still here? With me, of all people? You've built this place your home, as you call it. You could leave. Forge your own path without the shadow of a snake. Naruto didn't lift his head immediately. He sighed into the wood, the sound muffled. Inexplicable, huh? That's a fancy way of saying I'm a pain in your ass. He pushed himself up slowly, rubbing his eyes with the heel of his hand. His blue gaze met her golden one, steady and unyielding. Why stay? Because this is where I choose to be. You gave me power when the leaf gave me nothing but hate. Yeah, you've done messed up stuff, experiments, attacks, all of it. I haven't forgotten. But you've also seen me. Not the fox, not the failure. Just me. And this village? It's not just yours anymore. It's ours. The sound for Kabuto, Gurin, Yukimaruvan, the villagers who came because they had nowhere else. If I leave, what happens to them? Nah, I'm staying. Building something better. With you. Orochimaru regarded him in silence, her expression unreadable, but her mind turning over his words like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Surprising, always surprising. She rose smoothly, her yukata whispering against the floor as she moved to a small side table where a kettle simmered over a low flame. Kabuto's doing, no doubt, for her evening tea. But instead, she prepared coffee. Grinding dark beans with a small mortar, the rich aroma filling the room as she poured hot water over them in a simple brewer. It was a rare gesture. Orochimaru didn't serve others. But tonight, as the steam rose, she carried 2 mugs back to the desk, setting one before him. The brew was strong, black, with a hint of spice she'd added from her herbal stocks. Sit properly, she said lightly, though there was no command in it. She took her own seat, cradling her mug, the warmth seeping into her fingers. Naruto straightened, picking up the coffee with a grateful nod. He took a sip, the bitterness cutting through his fatigue like a kunai. Thanks. Hits the spot. They sat in companionable quiet for a while, the waterfall's distant roar filtering through the open balcony. Orochimaru sipped her coffee, her gaze drifting to the parchments before returning to him. The trade reports are promising, she said at last, steering the conversation to safer ground. Kimimara's negotiations have secured 3 new suppliers. Alliances with the border clans are holding your bridges, and Guren's crystals will facilitate faster caravans. Naruto leaned forward, interest piqued. Good. I figured the eastern bridge would help with that. Guren's been a beast with the reinforcements. Houses are solid now, and Yukimaru's loving the hot springs pipeline I rigged for their place. She arched a brow. You built them a house? He shrugged, a faint blush creeping up his neck. Yeah. Figured they deserved it. Big sis acts tough, but she's got a soft spot for the kid. Orochimaru's lips twitched in amusement. And you? Flirting again, I assume. Guilty, he admitted with a grin. Gets under her skin. But seriously's fitting in. Village feels whole. The talk meandered from there. Updates on Kabuto's lab restocking, Tayuya's complaints about guard duty, even a light-hearted anecdote about Kadamaru using his 6 arms to juggle crates and entertain the children. Orochimaru listened, interjecting with strategic insights or dry wit, the coffee mugs emptying as the night deepened. For a rare moment, the weight of past betrayals and future threats felt distant. Here, in this room, it was just them, mentor and protege, Snake and Fox, building something neither had expected. As the lanterns dimmed, Naruto stood, stretching. Gonna crash. Big day tomorrow, expanding the fields. Orochimaru nodded, setting her empty mug aside. Rest well, brat. He paused at the door, glancing back with a soft smile. You too. The door clicked shut, leaving her in the quiet. She stared at the parchments, but her mind was on him. Surprising choices, indeed. And perhaps, in time, she'd understand why they felt right. The night deepened over the valley, the waterfall's ceaseless roar a lullaby for the weary inhabitants of the new Otogekure. Lanterns flickered in the scattered houses below, casting warm glows that danced like fireflies against the mist-shrouded cliffs. Up in the headquarters, Orochimaru sat alone in her chambers, the parchments from her earlier conversation with Naruto still spread across the desk like forgotten battle plans. The coffee mugs had cooled, their remnants of faint, bitter scent lingering in the air. She pushed them aside with one elegant hand, her restored hand, fingers flexing with a fluidity she'd almost forgotten, and leaned back in her chair, golden eyes drifting to the open balcony. The view was serene, the river glinting under the moonlight, the wooden bridges Naruto and Guren had built arching gracefully over the water, the valley houses twinkling with life. It was her dream manifesting before her Aisa village of her own, unbound by the stifling councils of Konoha, a place where science and power could flourish without the chains of outdated morality. And yet, as she gazed out, her thoughts weren't on the alliances or the trade reports. They were on him, Naruto Uzumaki, the brat who'd stumbled into her web years ago and somehow woven himself into its very threads. From Orochimaru's perspective, he was an animalia puzzle that defied her centuries of understanding human nature. She'd always prided herself on dissecting motivations. Fear, ambition, greed, the desperate clawing for immortality or power. People were predictable, tools to be used or discarded in her quest for knowledge. But Naruto, he had helped her retrieve her arms without asking for a single thing in return. The Shinigami mask, that ancient Uzumaki relic, could have been his ticket to anything, resurrecting his parents, bargaining with gods, even turning it against her to claim vengeance for the third Hokage's death. Instead, he'd used it on her, sat by her bedside, channeled his medical ninjutsu to ease her pain, fed her like some wayward caregiver. Why? She'd probed him earlier, and his answer, simple, honest, infuriating, still echoed. Because this is where I choose to be. She rose slowly, her yukata whispering against the floor as she paced to the balcony. The cool night air brushed her skin, carrying the faint mist from the waterfall. How far he'd come, indeed, from the defiant child in the forest of death, squirming against her grip yet refusing to break, to this. A young man whose strength rivaled legends, building her village brick by living brick. He was making her dream come true, ruling a village? Yes, but one that pulsed with an unexpected vitality. The alliances were hers to forge, the experiments hers to oversee, but it was his energy that bound it all. The villagers looked to him now, not just her. Children laughed in the streets because of the homes he'd grown. Merchants traded boldly because of the bridges he'd spanned. And he was here, with her, learning her forbidden scrolls, sparring with her operatives, pestering her with his endless questions and that infuriating grin. She was already ruling subtly, from the shadows as she preferred, while he stood in the light, drawing people in. But with that came the dangers. Her mind turned darker as she gripped the balcony's wooden railing crafted by his wood style, of course. The Akatsuki loomed like a storm on the horizon. Itachi and Kisame, Kakuzu and Haiden, all hunting Jinchuriki for their mad plan. Naruto was a prize they'd covet, the Ninetales vessel, grown into a force that could tip balances. What would she do if they came? Let him deal with it, as he so boldly claimed? He was strong, yes, leagues beyond the boy she'd marked, but capture was a real threat. Seals could bind even the fox's rage. Torture could break even his will. What if he didn't come back? To the village, to her? The thought unsettled her more than she'd admit. Otogakure would survive, her ambitions were eternal, but the void he'd leave? The quiet chambers without his uninvited visits. The labs without his chaotic experiments. The village without his infectious energy? It would be diminished. She, who had always thrived in solitude, found the prospect oddly hollow. A faint smile touched her lips, wry and self-aware. This boy is truly dangerous. Not in the way of swords or jutsu, but in how he'd infiltrated her world, brought so much to her village without ever demanding credit. Vitality, loyalty, a sense of family she'd never sought but now couldn't ignore. The sound for deferred to him. Kabuto shared dry banter. Even Guren, prickly as she was, tolerated his flirtations. And she was being honest with herself, perhaps for the first time in decades. She didn't feel like upsetting him anymore. The old game's manipulation, testing loyalties with subtle poisons or veiled threats, held no appeal when it came to him. Honestly, not only that, she didn't feel like causing problems at all. The wars, the invasions, the endless cycle of destruction that had defined her exile, they seemed distant, tiresome. With Naruto around, pestering her with his reports, bringing his boundless energy to the village like a storm that watered rather than destroyed, she found an unexpected peace. It was disconcerting, this calm. But as she stood there, mist cooling her skin, she realized she welcomed it. With a soft sigh, Orochimaru turned from the balcony and moved to her private bathing chamber, adjacent to her room. The space was one of Naruto's Adishiansa natural hot spring he'd diverted from the mountainside. Piped through wooden channels he'd grown himself. Steam rose lazily from the stone basin, the water infused with minerals that eased aches she no longer felt as keenly. She shed her yukata, folding it neatly, and slipped into the bath. The heat enveloped her like a lover's embrace, muscles relaxing instantly, shoulders unknotting, the faint tension in her newly restored arms melting away. She leaned back against the smooth stone edge, long hair floating in the water like dark serpents, and closed her eyes. In the quiet, her thoughts circled back to him. Dangerous, yes. He'd upended her world without a single act of malice. Brought light to her shadows, purpose to her isolation. What if he left, captured, or worse? The Akatsuki's shadows loomed, but so did the leaf, persistent, meddlesome, always pulling at old threads. She could intervene, of course her networks of spies, her forbidden jutsu could shield him. But would she? Let him deal with it, as he insisted, or step in when the time came? The answer eluded her, swirling like the steam. For now, she let the warmth seep in, washing away the day's calculations. Peace. With him around, it felt possible. A small, genuine smile curved her lips, one not born of amusement or scheming, but simple contentment. She lingered in the bath until the water cooled slightly, then rose, drying herself with a soft towel and slipping into a fresh yukata. The chambers were silent as she padded to her bed, the silk sheets cool against her skin. She extinguished the lanterns with a flick of chakra, plunging the room into moonlit darkness. As sleep claimed her deep, untroubled for the first time in years, her last thought was of him. The brat, the anomaly, the one who'd made her dream more than she'd imagined. And in that quiet surrender to rest, Orochimaru found herself hoping, against all her cynical instincts, that he'd always be there to pester her tomorrow. The morning mist clung to the valley like a soft blanket. The waterfall's roar muffled in the early light as Otogekyure stirred awake. Naruto had risen before dawn, his mind heavy with the decision he'd made the night before. The Akatsuki's shadow loomed larger with each passing day. Kabuto's reports from his spies confirmed it. Whispers of movements, sightings of cloaked figures probing the borders. They were hunting Jinchuriki, and Naruto knew he was next. Staying would only paint a target on this fragile new home. He'd draw them away, lead them on a chase far from the valley. It was time to leave. He packed light. A simple scroll with essentials sealed inside, his black coat with the red Uzumaki spirals, a few kunai, and a pouch of rations. No fanfare, no dramatic farewell. But he couldn't just vanish, not after everything they'd built together. He needed to say his goodbyes, quiet ones, to the people who'd become his family. Starting with the villagers. Naruto wandered down the main path, the wooden bridges creaking softly under his feet as he crossed the river. The air smelled of fresh earth and blooming wildflowers from the gardens he'd helped plant. The first villagers he encountered were a group of merchants unloading a small caravan, early arrivals from Kimimara's trade routes, crates of fabrics and tools stacked neatly. They spotted him immediately, faces lighting up with genuine warmth. "Morning, Naruto-sama," one called, an older man with a weathered face and a missing tooth, waving him over. "Come see the new silks from grass country. Strong as ninja wire, they say." Naruto approached with an easy grin, clapping the man on the shoulder. "Looks good, Aji-san. You gonna make some banners for the training grounds? Make 'em orange just to annoy Tayuya." The group laughed, the sound hearty and trusting. No suspicion in their eyes, no fear of the fox sealed inside him. These were people who'd fled their own villages, drawn to Otogekyure's promise of a fresh start. They'd seen him build their homes, share meals by the fire, play with their kids. To them, he was simply Naruto, the one who made things grow. A young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, handed him a fresh steamed bun from a basket. "For the road? You look like you're heading out." He accepted it, biting into the warm dough. "Yeah, got some scouting to do. Keep an eye on things while I'm gone, alright? Don't let Kadamaru juggle the crates again. He dropped half last time." More laughter rippled through the group. They trusted him, completely welcomed him, not as a leader or a threat, but as one of their own. As he moved on, waving goodbye, a child tugged at his coat, offering a small flower crown made from valley weeds. "Come back soon, Naruto and I." He ruffled the kid's hair, tucking the crown into his pocket. "Promise, squirt." The interactions continued as he meandered through the village. A quick chat with a family outside their cottage, thanking him for the hot spring pipeline that made baths a daily luxury. A nod to an elderly couple tending the gardens, who pressed a bundle of herbs into his hands for safe travels. Each encounter was brief but heartfelt, a shared smile, a quiet word of encouragement. No tears, no dramatics, just the quiet bond of people who'd chosen this life together. It warmed him, even as it made leaving harder. Next, he headed to the labs, carved into the lower levels of the headquarters. The air grew cooler as he descended, the scent shifting to herbs and chemicals. He found Kabuto and Kimimaro working side by side in the main chamber. Kabuto bent over a workbench, meticulously labeling vials of newly brewed serums, his glasses perched on the end of his nose. Kimimaro standing nearby, carefully unpacking crates of rare ingredients from his recent trade run, his pale hands steady and precise. "Hey, Specs." Kimimaro, Naruto greeted, leaning against the doorframe with crossed arms. Kabuto glanced up, adjusting his glasses with a faint smirk. "Uzumaki, come to disrupt the peace?" Kimimaro turned, his green eyes calm and assessing. "Naruto." The supplies arrived intact. Naruto stepped inside, picking up a vial idly before setting it down under Kabuto's warning glare. "Good to hear. Listen, I gotta talk to you too. I'm leaving tomorrow morning." The room stilled. Kabuto's hands paused over his labels, and Kimimaro straightened, expression unchanging but attentive. "Leaving?" Kabuto echoed, voice measured. "Permanently?" Naruto shook his head. "Not just for a while. The Akatsuki theory getting closer. I don't want them finding this place. If I stay, they'll come sniffing. Better I draw them out. Lead 'em on a chase far from here." Kimimaro nodded slowly, understanding dawning. A wise strategy. The village's safety comes first. Kabuto set down his quill, leaning against the bench. "And Orochimaru-sama? She knows?" "Heading there next," Naruto said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You two keep things running smooth, yeah?" "Kabuto, don't let the labs turn into a madhouse." "Kimimaro, those trades keep 'em flowing. This place is counting on you." There was a quiet moment, the weight of unspoken bonds hanging in the air. Kabuto's smirk softened. "We'll manage. Just don't do anything too reckless out there." Naruto grinned faintly. "Me? Reckless? Never." Kimimaro placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder brief. "Firm. Return safely, brother." The word lingered as Naruto left, a warmth in his chest. From there, he headed to the training grounds, where the Sound Four were mid-session. The field was alive with chakra flares. Tayuya directing genjutsu waves from her flute, notes twisting illusions around practice dummies. Kadamaru weaving webs with his 6 arms, and snaring targets. Sakan/Yukon sparring in tandem, bodies merging and splitting in fluid combat. Jirobo grounding it all with earth-style barriers, his massive frame a wall of defense. They spotted him approaching and paused, wiping sweat from brows. "Oi, demon brat," Tayuya called, flute lowering. "Come to get your ass handed to you?" Naruto laughed, jumping the fence to join them. "In your dreams, Tayuya. Looking sharp out here, those genjutsu combos are nasty." Kadamaru flexed his arms. "Wanna test them? Maybe next time," Naruto said, his tone shifting. "Got something to tell you all. I'm heading out tomorrow morning." The group stilled, expressions ranging from Tayuya's scowl to Sakan/Yukon's raised brows. "Out?" Jirobo rumbled. "Why?" "Akatsuki," Naruto explained simply. "They're after the fox. If I stick around, they'll find us. Better I leave, draw 'em away. Keep the village safe." Tayuya crossed her arms, red eyes flashing. "TCH. Running off like some hero? We can fight 'em here." Naruto shook his head. "Not risking it. You four keep training, keep the defenses tight. Protect this place. It's our home now." A quiet nod from Kadamaru. "We'll hold the fort." Sakan grinned, Yukon echoing from his back. "Come back soon, yeah? Gets boring without you stirring shit up." Naruto clapped fists with each of Thema heartfelt gesture. Brief but solid. "Count on it." Finally, as the sun dipped toward evening, he sought out Guren and Yukimaru. He found them near their house, Yukimaru chasing fireflies in the grass while Guren watched from the porch. A small crystal flower in her hand, something she'd made for the boy. "Big brother." Yukimaru ran over, hugging Naruto's legs. "Hey, Squirt. Hungry? Let's grab some ramen from the old man's shop." The three set out together, walking the short path to the village center where an elderly merchant had set up a modest ramen stand, simple wooden benches, a steaming pot over a fire. They ordered bowls. Naruto's piled high with extras, Yukimaru's mild and small, Guren's with extra spice. As they ate, Yukimaru played with his chopsticks, twirling noodles into shapes, giggling when they slipped. Naruto slurped his broth, glancing at Guren. So, big sis, how's the house treating you? Hot springs still working? She nodded, a faint smile. It's comfortable. Yukimaru loves it. The talk was light at first, village gossip, Yukimaru's stories of playing by the river. But as bowls emptied, Naruto's expression grew serious. Listen, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Yukimaru's eyes widened. Leaving? But big brother. Just for a bit, Naruto assured, ruffling his hair. The Akatsuki want the fox inside me. I gotta lead him away so they don't find us here. Guren set down her chopsticks. Alone? That's foolish. Naruto met her gaze. Gotta be. But I'll come back. Promise. Gotta annoy you some more, right? Can't let big sis get too peaceful. She huffed, but her eyes softened. Idiot. Be careful. Yukimaru hugged him tight. Come back soon. Naruto walked them home, Yukimaru on his shoulders, Guren beside. At the door, he set the boy down, sharing a quiet nod with Guren, heartfelt, unspoken understanding. Finally, he headed to the headquarters, the moon rising as he climbed. Orochimaru's chambers were lit softly. 000000000000. Naruto lingered in the doorway of Orochimaru's chambers for a moment, the soft lantern light spilling out into the corridor like an invitation. The headquarters was quiet at this hour, the distant murmur of the waterfall the only sound accompanying the village's descent into night. He'd come straight from seeing Guren and Yukimaru home, the warmth of their farewell still lingering in his chest like a quiet ember. But this conversation, this one with her, had been building all day, a weight he needed to unload before the dawn brought his departure. He stepped inside, closing the door softly behind him. Orochimaru didn't look up immediately, her focus absorbed in the parchments spread before her. Detailed maps of trade routes, lists of alliances with minor clans, projections for the village's growth. Her long black hair fell in a loose curtain over one shoulder, and her golden eyes scanned the documents with that intense, unwavering precision he'd come to admire. The coffee mugs from earlier had been cleared away, likely by Kabuto on one of his silent check-ins, and a fresh pot of tea steamed gently on a side table, its herbal scent mingling with the faint mineral tang from the mist outside. Naruto didn't announce himself. He never did. Instead, he crossed the room with easy familiarity, pulling up a chair beside her desk and sinking into it with a sigh. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, watching her work in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The quill in her hand moved with elegant strokes, noting adjustments to a supplier agreement, her restored fingers steady and sure. It was mesmerizing in a way, the way she commanded even paperwork, turning chaos into order. Finally, she set the quill down, her gaze lifting to meet his. There was no surprise in her expression, only that quiet awareness, as if she'd sensed his need to talk before he'd even entered. Restless, brat? She asked softly, her voice a smooth drawl that carried a hint of amusement. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Something like that. He shifted in the chair, leaning back now, his blue eyes tracing the lines of her face, the sharp angles softened by the lantern light, the purple markings around her eyes that had once seemed so menacing but now just part of her. Mind if I sit here a bit? Watch you work? Orochimaru arched a brow, but there was no objection. As if you've ever asked permission before. She picked up the quill again, resuming her notations, but her posture relaxed ever so slightly, an unspoken invitation for him to stay. He did, content for a while to simply observe the scratch of quill on parchment, the occasional rustle as she turned a page, the way her lips pursed in concentration when a figure didn't add up. It was peaceful, this shared quiet. But eventually, the words he'd been turning over in his mind bubbled up, and he spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. He started, eyes fixed on her hand as it moved. Ever since we met back in the Forest of Death, when you marked me and asked all those questions about why I kept fighting, I've always known there was something to you. More than the scary snake lady everyone talked about. You saw me, really saw me when no one else did. Asked about the fox, the loneliness, like you got it, somehow. Orochimaru's quill paused mid-stroke, her golden eyes flicking to him again. She set it down slowly, turning her chair slightly to face him more fully. Sentiment, Naruto? At this hour? He chuckled softly, but there was no deflection in it. Yeah, maybe, but it's true. No matter what you do or choose experiments, alliances, whatever path you take, I'll always be here. Proud of who you are right now. The way you run this village, the something else. Keeping the trades flowing, making sure everyone's got a place. Soon it'll be big. Huge. You'll have to work overtime just to keep up with all the paperwork. He laughed then, a light, uncaring sound that echoed in the room. His head tilting back against the chair as if the thought amused him endlessly. Orochimaru watched him, her expression unreadable at first, but a faint smile curved her lips. His words settled over her like a warm veil, unexpected and disarming. She leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. Proud? Of me? There was a teasing lilt to her voice, but beneath it, genuine curiosity. Yeah, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious as he met her gaze steadily. Proud. But there's something I've been wondering. He paused, the laughter fading from his eyes, replaced by that earnest intensity he wore when he truly cared about the answer. Naruto took her seriously, always had, even when others saw her as a monster. Why haven't you resumed your experiments? The labs are set up, Kabuto's got everything ready, but you've held back. Why? The question hung in the air, quiet but weighted. Orochimaru held his gaze for a long moment, her golden eyes searching his face as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, she sighed softly, rising from her chair with graceful ease. She moved to the side table, pouring fresh water into a small kettle and setting it over a low flame, preparing coffee again, perhaps out of habit, or maybe to give herself a moment to think. The rich aroma began to fill the room as she ground the beans, her movements deliberate and unhurried. Well, she said at last, her voice low and thoughtful as she measured the grounds. Perhaps I found other pursuits more pressing. The village demands attention. Alliances to nurture, defenses to fortify. She glanced over her shoulder at him, a faint smirk playing on her lips. Or perhaps your endless moralizing has worn me down, brat. Naruto didn't laugh this time. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk now, his expression earnest. Well, whatever changed your mind, I appreciate it. That you thought of me, considered how I felt about the matter. Means a lot. Orochimaru paused in her preparations, the kettle steaming gently beside her. His words touched something deep, a vulnerability she rarely acknowledged. She finished the coffee in silence, pouring 2 mugs and carrying them back. She handed him one, their fingers brushing briefly a fleeting warmth before sitting across from him again. You give me too much credit, she murmured, but there was no bite in it. Sit, drink. He took the mug, sipping slowly, the bitterness grounding him. They sat like that for a while, the conversation drifting to lighter things, the village's growth, a funny story about Yukimaru trying to help Guren with her crystals and ending up with a tiny quartz flower crown. But the warmth lingered, drawing them closer in subtle ways. A shared glance, a quiet laugh, the easy comfort of 2 people who'd walked through fire together. As the hour grew late, Naruto felt the day's exhaustion catch up. He set his empty mug down and stood, stretching with a yawn. Gonna crash on the couch in the reception area. Don't want to walk back down in the dark. Orochimaru nodded, resuming her work. As you wish. He moved to the adjoining reception space, a small antechamber with a simple couch for waiting visitors, and flopped down, kicking off his sandals. Within minutes, he was out, breaths deep and even, the village's guardian finally at rest. Orochimaru worked on, the quill scratching steadily. But after an hour, she glanced Yupan. There he was, fast asleep, one arm dangling off the edge, ponytail askew. A soft smile touched her lips. She rose quietly, fetching a spare blanket from a chest, and draped it over him with careful hands. He didn't stir. She lingered for a moment, watching the rise and fall of his chest, then returned to her desk. The night wore on. Orochimaru pushed through another stack of reports, but fatigue crept in her body, though restored, still adjusting to full vitality. Her head nodded once, twice, and before she knew it, she was asleep at her desk, cheek pillowed on her arms amid the parchments. She woke to gentle shaking, Naruto's voice soft in her ear. "Hey, you need to go to bed." Blinking groggily, she lifted her head, golden eyes meeting his blue ones. "Brat, I was working." Before she could protest further, he scooped her up, bridal-style arms strong and sure, cradling her like she weighed nothing. "No arguments. You're gonna crash hard if you don't rest properly." Orochimaru stiffened at first, a faint flush coloring her pale cheeks. "I'm older than you, brat. Put me down." He just chuckled, carrying her effortlessly through the short hall to her bedroom's spacious chamber with silk sheets and a large window overlooking the valley. "Age doesn't mean you don't need sleep, snake lady." He placed her gently on the bed, tucking the covers around her with surprising tenderness. She looked up at him, half annoyed, half amused. "Corny as ever." Naruto smiled, leaning down. "Yeah, well, you're stuck with me. Sweet dreams, may your schemes be as twisted as your snakes." It was gentle, corny, laced with affection. Then, on impulse, he pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, cool lips against her skin. A brief, heartfelt gesture. He straightened, still smiling, and turned to leave, the door clicking shut behind him. Orochimaru lay there in the dim light, her thoughts swirling like the mist outside. The kiss lingered, a warmth spreading from her forehead to her chest, unexpected, disarming. This boy, this man, he'd upended everything. Healing her without demand, building her dream, choosing her despite her darkness. What did it mean? Was it pity? Loyalty? Something more? She touched her forehead lightly, golden eyes distant. Dangerous, indeed. He'd brought peace to her chaos, light to her shadows. And in that quiet moment, alone in the bed, she realized she didn't want him to leave. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Her village felt complete with him, pestering, laughing, fighting by her side. As sleep claimed her again, a small, genuine smile curved her lips. Whatever came, she'd ensure he returned. For the village. For her. 2 days had passed since Naruto slipped away from Odogekure under the cover of pre-dawn mist. He moved like a ghost across the landscape, body flicker chaining into high-speed dashes that ate up miles and hours. Forests blurred into grasslands, rivers crossed in single leaps, mountains skirted with wood-style vines for silent traversal. He slept only in snatches perched in tree branches, senses alert and ate on the move, ration bars chewed while running. The Nine-Tails chakra kept fatigue at bay, a low red simmer beneath his skin that sharpened his instincts. He knew he was being followed. It started as a faint prickle on the back of his neck late on the first day. 2 chakra signatures, distant but persistent, weaving through the same paths he'd taken. Not leaf too heavy, too deliberate. Akatsuki. He'd expected it sooner or later, but the timing grated. Kakuzu and Haiden, if the patterns matched Kabuto's descriptions. One a stitched immortal with elemental hearts, the other a zealot with ritual scythe and blood rites. Formidable but not unbeatable. Naruto didn't panic. He adjusted course northwest, toward the rugged borders of the land of earth, the hidden stone village's territory. Open valleys there, rocky terrain perfect for traps, far from any settlements he'd risk. By the end of the second day, he reached it. A wide, barren valley ringed by jagged cliffs, the ground cracked and stony, wind howling through like a warning. Perfect. He slowed to a walk, suppressing his chakra to a whisper, and began setting traps. Shadow clones popped quietly into existence, only 3, to conserve energy, each one working in tandem. With style roots burrowed underground, forming hidden spikes and binding vines triggered by pressure seals. Wind chakra laced the air in invisible blades, ready to activate on command. Explosive tags buried in false footprints, genjutsu overlays to mask the real paths. He worked methodically, sweat beading on his brow despite the chill, blue eyes scanning every angle. When the clones dispelled, their memories flooded back. The valley a death trap now, tailored for immortals who relied on brute force and rituals. Naruto perched on a high outcrop as dusk fell, legs dangling over the edge, watching the horizon. The pursuers would arrive soon. He cracked his knuckles, a faint grin tugging at his lips. Come on, then. Let's dance. Back in Otogakure, life continued in the steady rhythm Naruto had helped establish. For days had passed since his quiet Departurino grand announcement. Just word spread through the ranks that he was handling business. The village didn't falter. If anything, it thrived in his absence, a testament to the foundations he'd laid. The morning sun filtered through the mist, warming the valley as villagers went about their routines. Merchants set up stalls along the main path, hawking fresh produce from the gardens and crafted goods from the workshops. Children laughed as they chased each other across the wooden bridges, their footsteps a light patter over the river. Sound ninjas drilled in the fields, chakra flares controlled and precise under the Sound 4's guidance. The headquarters hummed with activity. Kabuto in the labs, brewing serums and organizing supplies with his usual efficiency. Orochimaru descended from her chambers that morning, her steps light and unhurried. She wore a simple dark yukata, practical for walking the village paths, her long black hair tied loosely to keep it from the breeze. The restoration had left her invigorated. No lingering aches, no cough to interrupt her thoughts. She moved through the streets with quiet grace, golden eyes taking in the sights. A family tending their garden plot, an elderly couple sharing tea on their porch, young ninjas practicing basic jutsu under watchful eyes. People greeted her warmly as she passed, not with fear, but respect laced with affection. "Good morning, Orochimaru-sama," a merchant called, bowing slightly as he arranged his herbs. "The new batch from the hot springs is ready, excellent for healing salves." She nodded, a faint smile curving her lips. "Excellent. Send a sample to Kabuto." A child waved shyly from a doorway, and she inclined her head in return, the gesture drawing a beaming grin from the little one. She admired it all, the life pulsing through what had once been mere hiding places. Houses grown from living wood, bridges arching like natural extensions of the land, the waterfalls mist creating rainbows in the sunlight. It was beautiful in its raw way. Her dream, realized not through conquest alone, but through this unexpected harmony. Her path led her to one of the reinforcement sites, where Guren worked on bolstering a storage building near the river. Crystals bloomed from her hands, weaving into the wooden walls like translucent veins, strengthening without sacrificing aesthetics. Yukamaru sat nearby on a rock, helping by forming tiny crystal flowers and arranging them in a pattern on the ground, his innocent attempts at mimicking her jutsu. Orochimaru approached quietly, her presence drawing Guren's attention first. The blue-haired woman straightened, wiping sweat from her brow, pink eyes wary but respectful. "Orochimaru-sama." "Guren." Orochimaru greeted, her voice smooth. "The fortifications progress well. Your crystals add an elegance the wood alone lacks." Guren nodded, a faint flush of pride coloring her cheeks. "Thank you. It's stable here. The valley suits the technique." Yukamaru looked up then, his face lighting up. "Orochimaru-sama." He ran over, holding out one of his tiny crystal flowers. "I made this." Orochimaru knelt gracefully, accepting the gift with a genuine smile that softened her sharp features. "Beautiful work, Yukamaru. You'll surpass us all one day." The boy beamed, returning to his play with renewed vigor. She rose, turning back to Guren. "And you? Settling in?" Guren glanced at the house nearby, the one Naruto had built for them. "Yes, it's more than I expected. The boy is happy." Orochimaru's smile lingered. "Good. We need loyalty like yours." And his joy it spreads. They spoke briefly of defenses, Guren demonstrating a new crystal barrier technique that could reflect elemental jutsu. Orochimaru offered subtle suggestions, her mind appreciating the potential. As she moved on, more villagers greeted Hera, nod here, a respectful bow there, warm smiles that spoke of acceptance. She returned them, the interactions brief but meaningful. Her rounds continued, checking on the Sound 4's training regimens, noting Taiyuya's improved Jinjutsu precision. A quick word with Kabuto in the labs, approving his latest serum batch. Even a stop at the gardens, where she admired the hybrid plants yielding faster under controlled chakra exposure. Then, as she walked a quiet path near the headquarters, a shadow flickered overhead. Her spy, a small, chakra-infused summoned birdland on a nearby branch, transforming into a scroll that dropped into her waiting hand. She unrolled it swiftly, golden eyes scanning the coded message. For days since Naruto's departure, the Akatsuki duo had abandoned their previous boarders Kakuzu and Haiden, pursuing the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Engagement reported. A battle in a valley near the land of Earth's borders. A concerned frown creased her brow. Kakuzu and Haiden formidable as a pair. Kakuzu's immortality through stolen hearts. Haiden's ritual undying tied to his blood god. They were relentless, a duo that thrived on prolonged, brutal fights. But she trusted Naruto. She'd overseen his training, personally watched him integrate the curse mark, master with style graphs, channel the Nine-Tails without losing himself. He was strong, clever, resilient. He'd handle them. It was Itachi and Kisame that worried her more. That Uchiha's Genjutsu could shatter minds. Kisame's raw power and Samahata devour chakra. If they approached Naruto, she might have to intervene. Leave the village, assist him directly. The thought didn't frighten her. It settled with quiet resolve. She scrawled a quick reply on the scroll. Monitor closely. Report immediately if Itachi, Uchiha, or Kisame Hashigaki engage the target. Priority 1. The bird took the scroll and vanished into the sky. Orochimaru dismissed the concern with a soft exhale, turning back toward the headquarters. The village continued around her, busy, alive, thriving. Naruto's influence lingered in every bridge, every home, every smiling face. She entered her chambers, the door closing softly, and settled at her desk once more. Work awaited, alliances to nurture, defenses to plan. But in the quiet moments, her thoughts drifted to him. Fighting alone, drawing the thread away to protect this place. This home they'd built. She'd trust him for now. But if the shadows grew too dark, she'd step into them herself. For the village. For him. The sun had long since dipped below the jagged cliffs of the valley, leaving the battlefield bathed in the cold, silver light of a rising moon. Wind howled through the cracked stone, kicking up dust and loose gravel as three figures stood in a tense triangle across the open expanse. Haiden lounged on the far left, scythe slung lazily over his shoulder, crimson eyes gleaming with manic delight. His black Akatsuki cloak fluttered like a banner of death, the rosary around his neck clinking softly. Kakuzu stood to the right, silent and brooding, his stitched body hidden beneath the cloak, tendrils occasionally twitching like impatient snakes beneath the fabric. Between them, in the center of the valley floor, Naruto Uzumaki rolled his shoulders, coat billowing, blue eyes sharp and focused. No grin this time, just calm, predatory readiness. Haiden broke the silence first, voice dripping with religious fervor. Jashin-sama's gonna love this one, Kakuzu. Fresh blood from the Nine-Tails brat. I can already feel the ritual calling. Kakuzu's masked face tilted slightly, threads whispering under his skin. Keep it quick. The bounty's higher alive, but I'm not dragging a corpse across 3 countries. Naruto exhaled slowly, chakra flaring around him in a faint red aura as Kurama stirred beneath his skin. You two talk a lot for guys who are about to get wrecked. Haiden laughed. A high, unhinged cackle and charged. The fight exploded into motion. Haiden came in swinging, his triple-bladed scythe whistling through the air in wide, brutal arcs. Naruto ducked the first sweep, feeling the wind shear past his cheek, then leaped back as the weapon embedded into the stone with a thunderous crack. Sparks flew. Haiden yanked it free and spun, following up with a low sweep meant to take Naruto's legs. Naruto flipped over it, landing lightly, but Haiden was already reversing the momentum, stabbing straight for his chest. Naruto twisted, the blade grazing his coat and tearing fabric, but not flesh. He countered with a Rasengan in his palm, wind infused, whining like a storm, and drove it toward Haiden's midsection. The immortal twisted at the last second, taking it on the shoulder instead. The impact sent him skidding back 20 feet, cloak shredded, skin torn but already knitting itself together with grotesque popping sounds. Ha! That all you got, fox boy? Haiden licked his lips, eyes wild. Pain's just foreplay for Jashin. While Haiden distracted, Kakuzu moved. The bounty hunter's right arm detached with a sickening rip of threads, rocketing forward like a missile, skin hardening into black iron as it punched toward Naruto's ribs. Naruto blocked with a wood-style bracer vines coiling instantly around his forearm, but the impact still drove him back, boots carving trenches in the stone. The arm retracted on threads, reattaching seamlessly as Kakuzu's left arm followed, this one crackling with lightning chakra. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He flickered away in a burst of speed, reappearing on a boulder, but Kakuzu was relentless. Both arms detached again, one earth-hardened, one lightning-charged, whipping through the air like living whips. Naruto leaped, twisted, deflected one arm grazing his side and drawing blood, the lightning one singeing his coat and numbing his left arm. Hayden used the chaos to close in again, scythe spinning. He managed a shallow cut across Naruto's forearm, barely a graze, but enough. Blood welled. Hayden's grin widened into something feral. He licked the blood from his blade, eyes rolling back as he began the ritual. Black skeletal markings spread across his skin, linking him to Naruto through the stolen blood. Naruto felt it immediately, a sharp, burning pain in his forearm, mirroring the cut he'd just inflicted on himself in the link. Hayden laughed and stabbed his own thigh with a kunai. Naruto grunted as identical pain lanced through his leg, forcing him to one knee. Gotcha now, sinner. Every wound I take, you take. Let's see how long you last before I offer your soul to Jashin. Kurama's voice rumbled in Naruto's mind, deep and furious. The link is through blood and ritual circle. Break the circle or sever the connection. Adapt, brat. Naruto gritted his teeth, forcing himself upright. Hayden drew the circle swiftly in the dirt with his scythe, completing the Jashin symbol. The pain intensified. Hayden sliced his own arm, and Naruto's mirrored the wound, blood flowing freely. But Naruto was learning. He flashed through hand seals, wind style. Great breakthrough, slamming a gust that scattered the ritual circle's lines, disrupting the pattern. The link wavered. Hayden snarled and tried to redraw it, but Naruto was already moving shadow clones bursting into existence around the battlefield. 5 Narutos charged Hayden from different angles, Rasengan spinning. Hayden swung wildly, decapitating one clone in a spray of smoke, but the real Naruto came from behind, driving a wind-enhanced Rasengan into Hayden's back. The impact launched the immortal forward, spine cracking, body tumbling across the stone. Hayden rose laughing, bones popping back into place. That tickled. Kakuzu, seeing the shift, went on full offensive. All 4 remaining masks on his back opened fire. Wind, lightning, water unleashing a barrage of elemental fury. Fireballs roared, wind blades sliced, water dragons coiled, lightning spears crackled. The valley became a maelstrom. Naruto danced through it, wood-style walls rising to block fire, wind chakra dispersing blades. Water dragons met with his own torrents. But Kakuzu was cunning. He detached 3 arms at once, each masked with an element, flanking Naruto while the main body charged with earth-hardened fists. One lightning arm caught him. The spear of pure Raitun chakra punched through Naruto's guard, piercing his side just below the ribs. Electricity exploded through his body nerves, firing in agony, muscles seizing, heart stuttering. He flew backward, slamming into a cliff face hard enough to crack stone. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he slid down, vision tunneling. Kurama roared, red chakra bubbling up like lava, knitting flesh and stabilizing his heart. Get up, brat. He's coming. Kakuzu advanced, threads whipping out to bind and finish the job. But Naruto rose slowly, painfully, red eyes flickering, 9 tails cloak forming in 1 tail, then 2. The wound smoked as it closed, Kurama's chakra burning away the lightning residue. Almost had me, Naruto rasped, wiping blood from his mouth. Won't happen twice. He learned. Adapted. Kakuzu's lightning mask fired again. Naruto didn't dodge. He absorbed it, Kurama's cloak devouring the chakra, converting it to fuel. Kakuzu's eyes widened behind his mask. Naruto vanished in a red flash, reappearing behind Kakuzu. A massive Rasen Shuriken wind and 9 tails chakra combined formed in his hand, larger than ever, howling like a typhoon. He drove it into Kakuzu's back. The explosion lit the valley like daylight, microscopic wind blades tearing through stitched flesh, severing threads, shredding hearts one by one. Kakuzu roared as masks shattered, elements dying with them. The final heart-earth tried to harden, but the raisin shuriken carved through, obliterating it. Kakuzu collapsed, threads limp, body crumbling. Haiden, seeing his partner fall, charged in blind rage, scythe raised for a killing blow. Naruto turned, exhausted but resolute. He let Haiden close, let the scythe bite deep into his shoulder. Blood flowed. Haiden laughed, beginning the ritual again. But Naruto smiled. He'd learned the pattern. As Haiden drew the circle, Naruto's shadow clone hidden underground since the fight began erupted beneath the immortal, with style spikes impaling legs and arms, pinning him spread eagle outside the ritual zone. The link broke. Naruto walked forward, pulling the scythe from his shoulder with a grunt. Kurama healed the wound as he went. Haiden thrashed, cursing. "You can't kill me, sinner, Jashin." Naruto formed a small Rasengan in his palm. "I don't need to kill you. Just make sure you never hurt anyone again." He slammed the Rasengan into the ground beneath Haiden. With style erupted roots coiling, dragging the immortal deep into a living coffin of earth and vine, sealing him in a subterranean prison hundreds of feet below, alive but trapped forever. The valley fell silent. Naruto stood alone amid the wreckage, breathing hard, bloodied but victorious. Moonlight glinted off the shattered stone and scattered threads. He looked up at the stars, a tired but satisfied smile breaking through. 2 down. Then he turned and vanished into the night, heading deeper into the wilderness, drawing the rest of the hunters away, protecting the home he'd built. Far behind, Otogakure slept peacefully under the watchful eye of its snake guardian. 000000000000000. The valley battlefield lay in ruins under the indifferent moon craters scarred the stone. Threads from Kakuzu's disintegrated body scattered like dead vines, and deep fissures marked where Haiden's underground prison had sealed shut. Naruto staggered away from the carnage, each step sending jolts of pain through his battered body. Blood seeped from the half-healed wound in his side where Kakuzu's lightning had pierced him, the skin knitted roughly by Kurama's chakra but still raw and throbbing. His left arm hung limp, nerves fried from residual electricity, and bruises bloomed across his ribs like dark flowers. The Nine-Tails cloak had receded, leaving him human again, exhausted, mortal, hurting. He didn't stop until the valley was miles behind, pushing through dense forest until he found a suitable refuge. A shallow cave carved into a hillside, hidden by overhanging vines and moss-covered rocks. The entrance was narrow, defensible, and the interior dry with a small trickle of spring water pooling in one corner. Perfect for recuperation. Naruto collapsed against the far wall, sliding down with a hiss of pain. Damn, those guys didn't hold back. He bit his thumb, forming a single shadow clone with the last dregs of his chakra. The clone knelt beside him, hands glowing green with medical ninjutsu techniques drilled into him by Kabuto and refined through endless practice. Cool healing energy flowed into the lightning wound, knitting deeper tissues, easing the burn in his nerves. Naruto leaned his head back against the stone, eyes half closed as the clone worked methodically, sealing blood vessels, stimulating cell regeneration, drawing out lingering Raiton residue that made his muscles twitch involuntarily. "You pushed too close that time," Brat * Kurama rumbled in his mind, voice gravelly but laced with grudging approval. *, but you adapted.